Good morning, beautiful people. I hope that you have an amazing day today. President Trump, well, this was yesterday, but President Trump was in China. Oh, shoot. I hope that you have an amazing day. Sorry. Sorry about that. Anyways, President Trump was in China. I'm going to get right into it. Everything I share is for educational purposes. And if you catch this on a replay, feel free to leave me a comment. Okay. There's something very patriotic about this meeting. What can I say? I would love to go to China someday. Did you watch this Noble? It was good. Right? Yeah, we might have to speed this up a bit. Look at them. The last meeting? Yeah, I'm gonna get to it. It's kind of a lot. Let me speed this up. I was watching this all day, and I'm just not getting around to sharing it with you guys, but
Okay.
it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna help us fix what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, let me fast forward this. Let's fast forward this. Wait, it froze. Why? Okay, wait. Let's get to where they actually there you go. I hope it plays. What's wrong with my phone? Hopefully it'll play for you guys. It's not playing. Boy. Hang on. Okay, here we go.
片的皇宫区大概都还有1000多年的历史，总统先生还是很感兴趣，包括对我们的花儿，我也说了，是把我们的乐器啊、种子我们好好安排一下，送给总统先生。
Well, this place used to be part of the Imperial garden. There is a lot of history around this compound. On our way in, we stayed to look at some of the old trees. One of them is 490 years old. In other places within this compound, there are trees that have lived to be over 1,000 years old. The president was interested to learn all about that, including the Chinese roses, which we looked at. And I've agreed to send the seeds for these roses to the president as a gift.
I love that. That's great. I want to thank you very much. This has been an incredible visit. I think a lot of good has come of it. We've made some fantastic trade deals, great for both countries. He's a man I respect greatly. Become really a friend. We've known each other now 11 years, almost 12 years. It's a long time. And we've settled a lot of different problems that other people wouldn't have been able to settle. And the relationship is a very strong one. We've really done some wonderful things, I believe. We did discuss Iran. We feel very similar to Iran. We want that to end. We don't want them We want the straits open. We're closing it now. They closed it and we closed it on top of them. But we want the straits open. And we want them to get it ended because it's a crazy thing. They're a little bit crazy. And that's no good. Can't have it. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. But we discussed a lot of other things also. And I think we're very much on agreement. We're going to have some further discussions now with the group. But I just want to thank President Xi and all of his representatives. We've become friendly with all of them. Great people. And it's an honor to be here. And we'll be back. And I believe on September 24th or thereabouts, President Xi is going to be coming to the United States. And we will be reciprocal, like reciprocal trade. The visit will be reciprocal. We're going to lay it on the line. And we're going to have, you're going to walk away, hopefully very impressed, like I'm very impressed with China. And I just want to end by saying thank you very much. It's been really a great couple of days. Thank you very much.
非常感谢，我觉得我这一次的访问真的是不可思议的一次访问。我们两位元首共同的做出了很好的成果。我们达成了很多的贸易的协议，我们两个国家之间达成了很多的共识。您也是一个非常值得尊敬的一个领导人，我对您充满了尊重。我们相互之间认识已经有11年多，几乎要12年了，这是非常长的一个长久的友谊的关系。那通过我们两个人讨论和合作，我们解决了很多的问题，别人都是没有办法能够解决这么多的问题的。我们两人之间的关系是非常好的。另外呢，我们讨论的问题当中还包括在伊朗问题上，我们也有非常相似的看法。我们都希望能够快速的解决伊朗的问题。那这个海峡，霍尔木兹海峡也必须要开放。现在呢是他们把它封锁了，然后呢我们也再加上一个封锁，这个是很疯狂的。我们大家都不希望是这样，希望能够尽快的开放这个海峡。那我们不能够允许伊朗拥有核武器。另外除此之外，我们还讨论了很多其他重要的问题。那我等一下呢就会跟我们这个两个代表团在大范围的再进行进一步的讨论。那么我还想要再次感谢习主席，也感谢中方代表团接待的所有的成员，我们大家都是好朋友了，而且我们将来还会再回来。另外呢，在今年的9月24日，习主席也将到美国来回访，这样的话呢，我们就可以实现元首之间的互访。我们在美国也会以同样的高规格来接待习主席，希望您在访问美国结束的时候呢，也会跟我一样有同样的这样的一种感受，能够觉得对于我们的接待能够感到留下深刻的印象。最后，我还是再次要感谢您的访问，这2天的访问我觉得非常的愉快和成功。
谢谢总统先生，谢谢你刚才的讲话。
Thank you for the support.
Thank you.
这次的访问是一个历史性的、标志性的访问。这个迄今我们已经达成了一个新的两国关系，就是建设性的战略稳定关系。这个可以说是一个里程碑式的一个访问事件，而且我们达成了很多这个合作的成果和意见，而且对国际问题也有了很多的。
Hey, let me I just love it there, you guys. Good morning, damage. I see you. Okay, let me fast forward this because I can watch this stuff all day. Look at them. This is awesome.
这是一个2棵树连在一起了，
Two trees
也是100多年前的一棵树。
It's a history of over 100 years.
It's 100 years.
100年吗？哦。
不止了，不止100米。
非常不
Close to 200.
非常不一般的。
我告诉你，这边的树全部是在200-300年以上，那边还有一个400多年。
All the trees here are around 200 to 300 years old. And the big one, just behind
那是粗一点是400
400 years old.
They live that long in these trees.
这些树真的能活这么久？
是的，还有1000年的树，
And there are trees
在其他的地方。
1000 years old.
Is he doing that?
那其他的国家来的元首啊、总统啊，或者是总理什么的，您作为国家主席，也都会到这边来接待他们吗？
很少。这个地方我们首先以前外事活动不在这里，后来有外事活动以后极少。
In the past, we never had a take on this content. And then even if we began to preserve
比如说，
很喜欢。
你看这个280年，
this tree,
清乾隆年280年，这摸一摸，这都是很好的。150年，
150 years old.
That's great.
很好。
So they live
150年，
150 years
it's
old.
pretty old, it's getting pretty old for sure.
对于树来讲，树龄这样
Nice,
很
nice
高了，
place.
这
Nice place.
很美的地方
I，like it.
我很喜
I
欢，
like this place.
我喜欢这地儿。
所有这里的
我这地儿能待得惯，我可能不想走了。
展现的这种生命啊，展现的这种历史啊，让我们站在这里啊，我们都会深受我们的这种影响。
Do they put
So lively and vibrant. People stand
记得往外走，你给他们甩了个
我们要进去，这些别堵着门儿。你们是往哪儿走？
OK，
This was earlier than Mass. He's departed Beijing already. He's- Wow, damn it. That's cool. That's right, no bone. Uh-huh.
我们今天在中南海对这个
Oh, man, me too. Oh my goodness.
进行这个查叙。
And
中南
Matt,
海是党中央和国务院
Sinmash. Am I live? This was earlier today.
办公的地方，也是我工作生活。
This was earlier.
这个新中国成立以后啊，就在这里。毛泽东、周恩来，到后来的这些邓小平、江泽民、胡锦涛都在这里。
Well, today I'm hosting the president and his officials in the Zhongnanhai compound for tea. This is a place where party and central government leaders in China work and live, including myself. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the leadership have moved to this compound, including the Chinese leaders Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and so on.
我安排在这里呢，实际上也是回报松增先生2017年在海湖庄园对我的款待。
I've chosen this place especially to reciprocate the hospitality extended to me in 2017 at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
这个地方是过去的皇家园林的一部分，很有历史感。我跟总统先生走过来的时候啊，都是在那里停留了一下。那些树都是几百年的树，其中有一棵是400。
You guys, that's how China to Ruston.
在这一片的皇宫区，大概都还有1000多年的书。总统先生还是很感兴趣，包括对我们的花儿，我也说了，是把我们的乐器啊，种子我们好好安排一下，送给总统先生。
Well, this place used to be part of the Imperial garden. There is a lot of history around this compound. On our way in, we stayed to look at some of the old trees. One of them is 490 years old. In other places within this compound, there are trees that have lived to be over 1,000 years old. The president was interested to learn all about that, including the Chinese roses, which we looked at. And I've agreed to send the seeds for these roses to the president as a gift.
I love that. That's great.
很喜欢你现在
That's
的
right. I want to thank you very much. This has been an incredible visit. I think a lot of good has come of it. We've made some fantastic trade
Come on,
deals,
Noble.
great for both
Great.
countries. He's a man I respect greatly. Become really a friend. We've known each other now 11 years, almost 12 years. It's a long time. And we've settled a lot of different problems that other people wouldn't have been able to settle. And the relationship is a very strong one. We've really done some wonderful things, I believe. We did discuss Iran. We feel very similar to Iran. We want that to end. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. We
I wish I had
want the
one.
Straits open. We're closing it now. They closed it, and we closed it on top of them. But we want the Straits open, and we want them to get it ended because it's a crazy thing. They're a little bit crazy, and that's no good. Can't have it. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. But we discussed a lot of other things also, and I think we're very much on agreement. We're going to have some further discussions now with the group. But I just want to thank President Xi and all of his representatives. We've become friendly with all of them. They're great people. And it's an honor to be here. And we'll be back. And I believe on September 24th or thereabouts, President Xi is going to be coming to the United States.
I
And
know you guys would
we
like
will
this.
be reciprocal, like reciprocal trade. The visit will be reciprocal. We're going to lay it on the line, and we're going to have, you're going to walk away, hopefully very impressed, like I'm very impressed with China. And I just want to end by saying thank you very much. It's been really a great couple of days. Thank you very much.
非常感谢，我觉得我这一次的访问真的是不可思议的一次好访问。我们两位元首共同的做出了很好的成果，我们达成了很多的贸易的协议，我们两个国家之间达成了很多的共识。您也是一个非常值得尊敬的一个领导人，我对您充满了尊重。我们相互之间认识已经有11年多，几乎要12年了，这是非常长的一个长久的友谊的关系。那通过我们两个人的讨论和合作，我们解决了很多的问题，别人都是没有办法能够解决这么多的问题的。我们两人之间的关系是非常好的。另外呢，我们讨论的问题当中还包括在伊朗问题上，我们也有非常相似的看法，我们都希望能够快速的解决伊朗的问题。那这个海峡，霍尔木兹海峡必须要开放。现在呢是他们把它封锁了，然后呢我们也再加上一个封锁，这个是很疯狂的。我们大家都不希望是这样，希望能够尽快的开放这个海峡。那我们不能够允许伊朗拥有核武器。另外除此之外呢，还讨论了很多其他重要的问题。那我等一下呢就会跟我们这个2个代表团在大范围的再进行进一步的讨论。那么我还想要再次感谢习主席，也感谢中方代表团接待的所有的成员，我们大家都是好朋友了，而且我们
I'm gonna play the meeting before this.
这样的话呢，我们就可以实现人手之间
I get it.
互访。我们在美国也会以同样的高规格来接待习主席，希望您在访问美国结束的时候呢，也会跟我一样有同样的这样的一种感受，能够觉得对于接待能够感到有非常深刻的印象。最后我还是再次要感谢您的访问，这2天的访问我觉得非常的愉快。
谢谢总统先生，谢谢你刚才的讲话。
Thank you for this.
Thank you.
这次的访问是一个历史性的、标志性的访问。这个迄今我们已经达成一个新的两个关系，就是建设性的战略的关系。这个可以说是一个里程碑式的访问事件，而且我们达成了很多这个合作的成果的一些，而且对国际问题也有了很多的。
Look at that. How did you guys not like that? I thought it was pretty awesome. Let me see, what did I show? I thought it was pretty good. What do you guys think? Let me see. Look at this. It looked like two buddies just taking a stroll. Thank you, Jerome. Damn it. Okay. Right? We understand each other. This one, Noble? Okay. Thank you, Sofa King High. I appreciate you.
The welcoming banquet hosted by President Xi Jinping for President Donald J. Trump now begins.
首先，请习近平主席致辞。
Now a toast by President Xi.
I love this.
"尊敬的特朗普总统，女士们、先生们，很高兴为特朗普总统对中国进行国事访问举行国宴。首先，我代表中国政府和中国人民，对特朗普总统和美国代表团表示热烈欢迎。
Honorable President Donald J. Trump, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to host the state banquet in honor of President Trump during his state visit to China. On behalf of the Chinese government and people, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to President Trump and the US delegation.
这是一次历史性访问。今年是中国15开局之年，14亿多中国人民立足于5000多年中华文明深厚基础， 正在以高质量发展全面推进中国式现代化。今年也是美国独立250周年，3亿多美国人民正在重振爱国、创新、开拓精神，推动美国发展迈向新的征程。中美两国人民都是伟大的人民，实现中华民族伟大复兴和让美国再伟大，完全可以并行不悖，相互成就，造福世界。
This is a historic visit. This year marks the start of China's 15th five-year plan for economic and social development. The over 1.4 billion people of China, drawing on the rich heritage of our over 5,000-year civilization, are advancing Chinese modernization on all fronts through high-quality development. This year is also the 250th anniversary of American independence. The over 300 million American people are reinvigorating the spirit of patriotism, innovation, and enterprise, and ushering in a new journey for the development of the United States. The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
55年前，尼克松总统派基辛格博士访华，中美开展乒乓外交，双方官民并举，推开了中美冰封20多年的大门，成为当代国际关系史上重大事件。此后，中美之间以很多开放合作的故事，不断书写着友谊的佳话。新形势下，我同特朗普总统顺应两国人民和国际社会期待，通过多次会晤和通话，推动中美关系保持总体稳定。
55 years ago, President Richard Nixon sent Dr. Henry Kissinger to visit China, and ping-pong diplomacy was carried out between our two countries. Through efforts of the two governments and peoples, the door that had remained frozen for over 20 years was opened, marking a milestone in contemporary international relations. From then on, China and the United States have written many chapters of friendship through mutual openness and cooperation. Under the new situation, President Trump and I, fully aware of the expectations of our two nations and the international community, have had multiple meetings and phone calls and kept China-US relations generally stable.
今天，我同特朗普总统就中美关系和国际及地区形势深入交换意见。我们一致认为，中美关系是当今世界最重要的双边关系，只能搞好，不能搞坏。两国合则两利，斗则俱伤，应该成为伙伴而不是对手。我们同意构建中美建设性战略稳定关系，推动中美关系稳定、健康、可持续发展，为世界带来更多和平、繁荣、进步。
Today, President Trump and I had in-depth exchanges on China-US relations and international and regional dynamics. We both believe that the China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals. President Trump and I also agreed to build a constructive
China-US relationship of strategic stability, to promote the steady, sound, and sustainable development of China-US relations, and bring more peace, prosperity, and progress to the world.
尊敬的特朗普总统先生、女士们、先生们、朋友们，纵观中美关系发展历程，能不能做到相互尊重、和平共处、合作共赢，是中美关系能否稳定发展的关键所在。当今世界变乱交织，中美关系承载着两国17亿多人民的福祉，关乎世界80多亿人民的利益。我们应当共同扛起这个历史重任，推动中美关系这艘巨轮沿着正确的航道平稳前行。
Honorable President Donald J. Trump, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Looking back at the course of China-US relations, whether or not we could have mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation is the key to whether the relationship can advance steadily. The world today is changing and turbulent. China-US relations concern the well-being of the over 1.7 billion people of both countries and affect the interests of the over 8 billion people of the world. Both sides should rise up to this historic responsibility and steer the giant ship of China-US relations forward, steadily and in the right direction.
最后，我提议，为中美两国发展繁荣和人民幸福，为中美关系的美好未来和两国人民的友谊，为特朗普总统以及在座的各位朋友的健康干杯。
Now please join me in a toast to the development and prosperity of China and the United States and the well-being of our people, to the bright future of China-US relations and the friendship between the two peoples, and to the health of President Trump and all the friends present. Cheers.
干杯。
Cheers.
谢谢习近平主席。
Thank you, President Xi.
现在请特朗普总统致辞。
Next, a toast by President Trump.
Well, thank you very much. This is a great honor. It was a fantastic day. And in particular, I want to thank President Xi, my friend, for this magnificent welcome. And it really was a magnificent welcome like none other. And for so graciously hosting us on this very historic state visit. We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China. And it was a great honor to be with you. Please.
感谢习近平主席。今天我们度过了非常美好的一天。首先要感谢习近平主席这一盛大的欢迎，那么也非常感谢在这一次历史性的国事访问当中非常慷慨地接待了我的代表团。那么今天早些时候，我们跟中方进行了富有成效以及具有建设性的 对话。那今天晚上将是我们另外的一次机会，能够共同再次讨论我们今天早些时候已经讨论到的一些问题，以及我们的共同利益，以及我们如何能够为全人类塑造更好、更安全的未来。
The relationship between the American and Chinese people goes all the way back to America's founding. The first American consul to China, Samuel Shaw, arrived on the first American trading ship to reach these shores in 1784. The Chinese merchants had a name for the Americans. They called their visions the New People. 2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
美国人民和中国人民之间的友谊可以追溯到美国的建国之初。那么，美国的第一任驻华大使塞缪尔·肖先生在1784年乘坐第一艘美国的商船到达了中国的沿岸。当时中国的商人是这样称呼到来的美国访客，他们将当时到来的美国访客称为一个崭新的民族。250年后的今天，这一个当初的友谊已经慢慢的演变成为当今世界当中最举足轻重的关系之一。
From the beginning, our citizens have shared a deep sense of mutual respect. Founding Father Benjamin Franklin published the sayings of Confucius in his colonial newspaper. And today's sculpture, recognizing that ancient Chinese sage, is carved into the face of the United States Supreme Court very proudly.
从一开始，我们两国之间的人民就已经有深厚的相互的尊重。美国的国父本杰明·富兰克林曾经在他的殖民报纸当中刊登了孔子的《论语》，而今天在美国最高法院建筑物的门前，可以说有一个雕刻，这个雕刻就是为了向中国的这一名古代的圣人进行致敬。
The appreciation ran in both directions. Chinese admirers of President George Washington gifted a stone tablet honoring his memory to adorn the Washington Monument. It bears the words of a Chinese official who called the great general and statesman a hero among men.
这一种欣赏是相互的。那么，许多中国人非常崇敬乔治·华盛顿总统。那么，这些人当时就向美国捐赠了一个石碑，就是为了纪念华盛顿总统。目前这个石碑已经镶嵌在华盛顿纪念碑里面，石碑上刻有当时的一名中国官员形容这一名伟大的将军和政治家，他们把他称为人中豪杰。
And across the centuries, this mutual esteem grew into a relationship that reflected the tremendous talent and potential of our two people. Chinese workers helped lay the railroad tracks that connected our Atlantic coast to the Pacific. American travelers to China helped spread literacy and modern medicine. And at the request of China's ambassador, it was President Theodore Roosevelt who provided the funds to establish President Xi's alma mater, Tsinghua University.
在过去几百年当中，这种相互的尊敬已经成为了一段全新的关系。这段关系可以说反映出我们两国人民之间巨大的潜力以及我们的努力和智慧。中国工人当初帮助美国建设了我们的铁路路轨，连通了美国的大西岸和太平洋沿海地区。美国当时早期出访中国的美国人也帮助中国提升了识字率，并且引入了现代医学，并且应时任中国驻华大使的请求，罗斯福总统也专门提供了资金，成立了习主席的母校清华大学。
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say, just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
那么，作为二战期间的盟国，罗斯福总统在美国的多次演讲当中提到了勇敢的中国人民。正如当前许多中国人非常喜欢篮球和穿蓝色的牛仔裤，在美国目前的中餐厅的数量要比美国前5大快餐连锁店的总的店面还要多。
This bond of commerce and respect that stretches back 250 years is the foundation for a future that benefits both of our nations. The American and Chinese people share much in common. We value hard work. We value courage and achievement. We love our families and we love our countries. Together, we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness, and peace for our children. We love our children. This region and the world is a special world with the two of us united and together.
那么，至于商业当中的纽带以及我们的相互尊重，可以说追溯到250年前，是我们将要构建的未来的基础。至于未来将会惠及我们两国的人民，美国人民和中国人民有许多的共同点，我们都崇尚劳动，我们都崇尚勇气和成就，我们都非常爱我们的家庭，我们也爱我们的国家。我们两国一道，我们将有机会基于我们共同的价值观，创造出一个更加繁荣、基于合作、幸福、和平的未来，为我们的子孙、为本地区以及全世界造福。
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome. And tonight it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th. And we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast to the rich and enduring ties between the American and Chinese people. It's a very special relationship. And I want to thank you again. This has been an amazing period of time. Thank you, President Xi.
那么再一次感谢习主席，感谢这一美好的欢迎。那么今天晚上，我也想借此机会向您以及彭女士提出邀请，于9月24号邀请你们出访白宫。那我也希望，针对美国人民和中国人民之间深厚的以及持久的友谊，我提议我们进行举杯。那么我们这两国关系是非常独特的一项关系。
Thank you, everybody.
感谢。
Thank you, everybody, very much.
感谢。
That is just so amazing. That is so amazing. Oh, I have one question. Donald Trump is eating great. He took off his team. Oh, his brother died? No, I didn't know that. Oh. It is history. Oh, wait. God. No, we're not about to watch. No.
Chinese President Xi.
That is a good documentary, but no, that's not the mood today. Not the mood. Did I show you guys the lunch? Did I show you guys that? I'm gonna red ball through this because I have to get through. What time is it? 1:30. Let me red ball this. I think. What did I show you guys? Hang on, guys. Let me see what. Maybe this one, I think. Let me know, you guys, if you've seen this one. So I think I forgot to. What did you say, Doc? Let me know what was discussed behind the scenes. Oh, me too. I want to know what was discussed. Did I? Oh, hey, Claude. His brother died from alcohol? Donald Trump's brother, Noble? Let me know. I didn't hear about that. I want to find it. Okay, let me red ball this for you guys. You can tell. Hang on. We're going to red ball this. And then I'll show you one more thing, and that's it, I promise. That's it.
Everybody.
Please put on the earpiece for the simultaneous interpretation. Thank you.
Bye, user.
做一个致辞，然后请总统先生便利加速演进。国际形势是变乱交织，世界走到新的十字路口。中美两国能不能跨越所谓的总统先生就事关两国和世界的重大问题交换意见，共同为中美关系这艘大船领好航、掌好舵，让2026年成为中美关系继往开来的历史性、标志性年份。我就先说这么多，请总统先生讲。
Well, President Xi, I want to thank you very much. First of all, that was an honor like few have ever seen before. And I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing, and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you. You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, for me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you, and you would call me. Whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked it out very quickly. And we're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody, you're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth. And I just want to say on behalf of all of the great delegation that we have the greatest businessmen, the biggest, I guess the best in the world. We have amazing people, and they're all with me. Every single one of them. We asked the top 30 in the world, every single one of them said yes. And I didn't want the second or the third in the company. I wanted only the top. And they're here today to pay respects to you and to China. And they look forward to trade and doing business. And it's going to be totally reciprocal on our behalf. So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever. They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press.
That's just a lot, and I really like that. I just do. And something about how the Chinese people do things, you guys, it's just it's just pretty great. Look at them. He's leaving, obviously. I'm so happy. I would say that was a successful meeting, but I'm gonna see what happens after this, you guys. Can y'all hear me? Thank you, John. Look at that. I just think that is so amazing. The United States. How do you guys not feel pride when you see the plane, right? We really live in an amazing country. Yeah, it's almost Doc's birthday. Why do I like this stuff, you guys? I don't know. This makes me so happy. All right, you guys. As much as I can watch this all day, look at that. Cringe. I just love this. Somebody said smog. Look at that. Okay, you guys. Anyways, so that's what happened in China. Yeah.
Okay, I look sorry. It's okay. 多带一点，我正调整呢，没想到。
Enough
不好意思。
Enough of that. Prayers to our country and to President Trump. Wait, why is that still playing? You got to turn it off. Prayers. You guys have to be pretty anti-American not to like that, you guys. Okay, all right, let's get to some other news. America first. Your feelings second. All right,
Iran has seized another commercial vessel off the east coast of the United Arab Emirates outside the Strait of Hormuz. It's the latest escalation in tensions over the crucial waterway and Iranian ports. Correspondent Lucas Tomlinson is in Dubai tonight.
The hijacked ship was last seen heading for Iranian waters. The British military says the incident took place at 9:45 this morning, 38 nautical miles from Fujairah, off the coast of the UAE in the Gulf of Oman. Iran's foreign minister claims the country still controls the Strait of Hormuz.
As far as we are concerned here, the Strait of Hormuz is open for all, commercial vessels. But they need to operate with our Navy forces.
Abbas Araghchi attended the BRICS Economic Summit in New Delhi today. On the same day, an Indian-flagged ship was attacked and sunk off the coast of Oman. India condemned the attack, but did not assess which country was behind it. With the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports now more than a month old, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Iran feels the effects on Karg Island, the export hub of 90% of its oil before the war.
There have been no loadings in the past 3 days. We believe their storage is full. None of the ships are getting out. None are coming in.
A former advisor to President Trump wants U.S. forces to get more involved to bring Iran to its knees.
I think you take something of value to their administration, you put them at risk. You take something like Karg Island. I know it's going to be risky to do so, but you've got to do it.
Israel has assisted the Emirates with air defense systems. The Prime Minister's office says Benjamin Netanyahu secretly visited the United Arab Emirates to meet UAE's President Mohammed bin Zayed.
3 hours after that statement from the Prime Minister's office was released, the UAE's foreign ministry issued its own statement denying the visit took place, Brett.
Lucas Tomlinson, live in Dubai. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy starts us off again today here at the Chinese capital. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Brett. And we were just a few feet away from President Trump and President Xi during this welcome ceremony. And President Trump had his biggest smile as I have seen on his face. And I am with him every day. But then he and Xi had to go to work. cannons blasting, troops marching, children cheering.
I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful.
Part of Xi's charm offensive even borrowed President Trump's most famous slogan.
Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
All this to set the stage for President Xi to lay bare what he wants out of this summit.
How are your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about
Great place. Incredible.
They did talk about Taiwan. An official Chinese readout says President Xi stressed that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts. Official U.S. policy towards control of Taiwan is known as strategic ambiguity, but the U.S. still doesn't think Beijing should try to take over the self-governing island.
We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States.
The president's push for China to open up to American businesses means at least one CEO in the delegation is leaving with a multi-billion-dollar agreement.
One thing he agreed to today is going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing, Boeing's.
Boeing.
200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs.
And it turns out, even when the leaders disagree, the residents of these superpowers have a lot in common.
Just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans, Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
And there have also been some noisy and physical disputes between members of the U.S. and Chinese delegations. We experienced some of that firsthand yesterday. Leaving that welcome ceremony, I was ordered onto a bus that then immediately left with nobody on it except for me and a driver that didn't know I wanted to get off.
Wow.
But after lots of shouting and pointing on the bus and off the bus, we got where we needed to be.
Secret Service had a little back and forth too.
They did. At a separate event, they didn't want to let one of the president's protected detail members bring a firearm in. More shoving, more shouting, but they figured it out.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Peter, as always, thank you. Lucas, thanks. The head of U.S. Central Command says American and Israeli forces have taken out the vast majority of Iranian weapons making capabilities and naval forces, but still has a small or very moderate ability to strike its neighbors. Admiral Brad Cooper testifying on Capitol Hill today about Iran's remaining military strength and whether the U.S. weapons inventory is dangerously depleted. Here's Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin.
At his first public hearing since the Iran conflict began 7 weeks ago, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper pushed back on leaked assessments about Iran's remaining missile stockpiles.
Iran continues to have as much as 70 to 75% of its missiles and launchers. The numbers that I've seen in open source are not accurate. It's more than just the numbers. It's the command and control that's been shattered. It's a significant degradation in capability. And it's the lack of any ability to then produce any missiles or drones on the back end.
Democrats also want to know about depleted U.S. munition stockpiles. Reports the U.S. has fired 45% of its Patriot missiles since February.
Can you talk to me about how this constrains our air and missile defense?
Senator, I have all the munitions necessary to both defend our forces as well as conduct a broad range of contingencies.
Republicans asked about whether Iran is less of a threat.
They are significantly less of a threat.
Is it fair to say that the Iranian regime is still a revolutionary terrorist regime even after all the deaths of their senior leaders?
They are.
There were also questions about civilian casualties.
How did we then bomb 22 schools?
There's no indication that we have that has been corroborated.
How many schools have we bombed?
There is one active civilian casualty investigation from the 13,629 munitions.
So how do you explain the publicly available information that 22 schools have been hit and multiple hospitals?
There's no way that we can corroborate that. No indication of that whatsoever, Senator.
Admiral Cooper says the U.S. has destroyed 85% of Iran's weapons manufacturing facilities, 90% of Iran's inventory of 8,000 naval mines, and it will be 10 years, he says, before Iran can rebuild its navy. But he admitted the IRGC still has a very moderate capability to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz. Brett?
Okay, Jen, thank you.
Let's bring in retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. He served more than 30 years in the Navy as a nuclear-trained surface warfare officer. He's a senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Admiral Montgomery, always good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. I would like to start with you, if I may, with this question that I was just discussing with Lydia Hu about this issue of the potential for the United States to delay a promised defense delivery to Taiwan. And whether or not, we don't know if this is the case, but there is some suggestion that perhaps that might be being held back as part of a potential agreement for China to help open up the strait. What do you think about that? And do you think that that is something that might be under discussion in China right now at these meetings?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And so this is a big deal. So there's 11 billion that was agreed to last year, which is going to happen. Then there's 14 billion that's been held back. It was held back so that it wouldn't interfere with this summit, not as trade bait in my mind. And so the idea was you don't announce right before a big summit another 14 billion. So I believe that when the summit's over, we'll announce the 14 billion. To do anything else would really be a mistake. I mean, Taiwan is truly the model ally. In the previous segment, you talked about just the importance of them to our own economic prosperity. They drive their $150 billion of compute that comes into our country, drives trillions of dollars a year in US GDP. They are a critical ally, and to hold this back would be devastating to their ability to defend themselves and to work with us as together the two of us defend Taiwan's ability to prevent the Chinese coercion. So I really hope that they're not on the menu at this discussion and that there's not some kind of trade like that. Whatever we got in return would be short-term and temporal and not, long-term security risk. One last thing I'll say, our allies, Japan and Korea, would look at this very nervously if we did not support and stand by Taiwan.
No doubt. And Japan has just really begun to sell defensive weaponry to other countries in the region. You can see all of these, Japan, as you mentioned, South Korea, Taiwan, trying to build up their own protection defense against China and their aggression in this region. Back to Iran for a moment, Admiral. This is Brad Cooper on this question of the fast boats, because they've been quite menacing. There were 300 and something of them in the water, menacing ships in the strait. We've heard a lot about the decimation of the Navy of Iran, but these boats seem to be causing quite a few problems. We've got some information on these boats on the wall that we can take as you answer that question for us, if you would, sir.
Yeah, so I am worried about these small boats, not in terms of U.S. ships, but in terms of merchant ships that would not be under U.S. escort. But if a merchant ship is doing it as part of a protected security access or escort from the United States, that means U.S. A-10s, those are attack planes, and U.S. Armed helos would be pursuing these small boats, and the A-10 versus these small boats is not a fair fight. The A-10 wins. So the way you have to look at this is, if you try as a merchant ship there on the right to get through without U.S. support, you're going to get the Iranian fast attack boats there in the middle. If you have the U.S. Navy, the U.S. military with you, you'll get the A-10 supporting you, and you won't have this problem.
So what about this issue that Admiral Cooper addressed? And there have been quite a bit of reporting about our munitions, that we're running low on some of the missiles that have been spent in this war so far. And you heard from Admiral Cooper, he said, we have what we need. We've heard the same thing from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's an accurate look at this?
So, I mean, this is a complicated question. My answer would be that for what we would have to do in a 3 or 4 week additional campaign, we have what we need. What people are worried about are the exquisite long range penetrating strike things like Tomahawk There's another one called JASM ER. Doesn't matter. We did burn up 40% of those. But the good news is we don't need them for the follow-on strikes. But PACOM needs them, EUCOM, the Indo-Pacific Command and the European Command need them for China and Russia problems. And there, we're fortunate that the Congress passed legislation last year that allowed us to expand production levels. And then the administration in their March budget drop actually asked for, expanded capabilities. And so they're going to increase things like Tomahawk production from 150 to 200 a year to 1,000 a year over the next 4 years. So we're solving this problem, but there are going to be moments over the next 2 or 3 years where we wish we had more munitions because we expended them here. But that's why you use munitions. You have munitions so that you can use them, not so that you can continually say, I have enough munitions.
I hear you. Thank you very much, Admiral Montgomery. It's always great to have you with us, sir. Many thanks.
Thanks.
All right, Sandra, let's bring in retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, co-chair of the American Security of AFPI. So question that I have, a lot of other people might have it, is why is Iran still being allowed to threaten shipping?
Well, thanks, John, for having me on. Look, because of led by a bunch of thugs. I mean, until you get rid of the leadership, which is a theocratic revolutionary leadership, you're going to have the same problems. And they're protected by the Revolutionary Guards, which is not the army. They were set up under the first Ayatollah, under Khomeini, and they protect the administration. And you've got to get rid of them because you're going to have the same guys dealing with in 5, 10, or 15 or 20 years. What Brad Cooper said is really smart. I mean, he's telling, the senators, look, we're going to be okay. We haven't done what you think we've done. And frankly, I'd probably say if I was there, but probably why I'm not there, is I read the Constitution. Under Article 2, Section 2, there is one commander-in-chief, and that's the President of the United States. He's done a pretty good job. Yeah. And he's got a great Secretary of War in Hegseth. He's got a great Secretary of State in Rubio. They're finishing off the job, and let's finish it all. I've been hard over. I know that. And I think you take something of value to their administration, you put them at risk. You take something like Kharg Island, you take the islands of the Gulf, you open up the Strait of Hormuz with our minesweepers if necessary to do it. I know it's going to be risky to do so, but you've got to do it. Look, they're in clear violation of international law. Yeah. I'm just stunned that the other people have not done that. The other nations, like the Brits or the French or the Italians or somebody else. When you look at the law of seas, the Conference on the Law of Seas, they're in clear violation of Article within there about keeping the freedom of the seas open. They haven't done it, so they're in violation of that law as well. Somebody needs to gang up on them, much like the president has done. Which, to his credit, he's the first president we've had in 8 that's done something about it and open up the straits. It's going to get done. I'm absolutely confident it's going to get done.
As I said, I can't believe they're still being allowed to get away with this. But the president does seem to have somewhat of a partner in Xi Jinping. This is what they said in the joint statement. The two sides agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open to support the free flow of energy. President Xi also made clear China's opposition to the militarization of the strait and any effort to charge a toll for its use. And he expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. Both countries agreed that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon. So they're both on the same page with all of that. Iran is using these little, what are called Ghadir-class submarines. They're about 95 feet long to harass ships in the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. These things, again, they're about 95 feet long. They've got about 20 of them. And a question that I have is, why are these things not on the bottom of the ocean?
They probably will be, John. I am absolutely convinced the military's got that under consideration. They'll do something about it, and they'll sink them as well. This is not a winning game for the Iranians. It's a losing game for the regime over the long term. And I would put them at risk. I keep my foot on their throat and keep squeezing them and squeezing them and squeezing them. The blockade has done great, but I'd like to pull the blockade out by taking something like Kharg Island or the islands of the Strait as well. You got the Marines can do it, the Rangers can do it, the 82nd can do it. They can do that, and then not keep it in perpetuity, but control their economy and say to the Iranians, look, we're just going to hold this till you quit. The negotiations, I'd say we're done with this stuff. Yeah. You got my phone number. You give me the phone call when you're tired of this, and we'll finish it off. And I think the Iranian people are going to get fed up with it eventually.
General, one of the other big issues related to the Iran conflict, and it's not necessarily directly related to Iran, but other potential conflicts around the world, is the status of U.S. weapons stockpiles. This is what Pete Hegseth said before the House Appropriations Committee the other day.
The munitions issue has been foolishly and unhelpfully overstated. We know exactly what we have. We have plenty of what we need.
So he says that we got everything we need. We know exactly how much we need. We know exactly where it is and how to get it. But there is some talk that maybe we don't have enough. What do you say?
Well, I mean, as a former military guy, you always say that we never have enough. We need more. They've got enough to prosecute this war. I'm convinced about that. And oh, by the way, even if it wasn't true, why would you tell the enemy that? You wouldn't do that at all. If I was down to my last round of ammunition, I wouldn't scream, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm out of ammunition. You don't do that. And I think we're pretty well prepared for anything that follows. Can we ramp up the defense industry? Of course we can. Have they been slow on the uptake? Sure. But they'll get it done and they'll get it completed. But I'm with the Secretary of War. I think we're going to be fine in what we've got in our position, in our munition stockpiles. And Brad Cooper saying the same thing. We've got what we need to get this job done. And I think we're prosecuting pretty well. I think the president's got a great team. He's doing a great job. And I think we'll just finish the job, which I think we need to do.
All right. Good to spend time with you, General. Appreciate it.
All right. It is 18 minutes past the hour, and it is another sign of a resilient Trump economy. Look at that market. Retail sales number came in today. It was up 0.5% in April, and it was good news for the American retail sales. And the Dow is right now up past that psychological 50,000 mark as the U.S. stock market is hitting all-time highs, S&P and NASDAQ. Crude oil prices up just a little bit, above $101 a barrel. Larry Kudlow, this is perfect timing. He is here now, host of Kudlow on Fox Business. First up, the retail sales numbers, the U.S. stock market. Tell us what we need to know.
You know, the sales numbers were booming. And the core, the so-called control group that feeds into GDP, you're right, it was up 0.5%, 0.5. Last month, 0.8. February, 0.9. Last 3 months, 9.2% at an annual rate. That is huge.
But everywhere I look, it says people are concerned about the economy and the high prices. But this number would indicate people are still out there
People are
spending.
spending their keisters off. There's another, even though gas prices are up, and by the way, I think you got another month or two of high energy prices that are going to distort the CPI and so forth. The fact is they're discovering now the Treasury and IRS refunds were much bigger than first expected. The early estimates are about, in round numbers, $100 billion, maybe $105 billion. Now it looks like the revised estimates is coming in at about I've got $178 billion. All I'm saying is that's a cushion for the energy spike and the gasoline spike. People just didn't feel it that much. Plus, we're not the country we were with energy spikes 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Sure.
We're more efficient, number one, but we're energy producers. We're producers. So actually, a segment of business and the population is producing and working in the oil business and the natural gas business. So that's very
But
cool.
still there's inflation, and still we did see evidence that prices keep going up. This
There'll
is
be
something
more.
President has to deal with, and he has said he will.
He will. But can I make this point?
Sure.
I've said this before. I'm going to say, Atlanta Fed GDP, second quarter, 4.0%. That's what they're carrying right now. Growth, GDP, real GDP. It was revised up from 3.7 to 4.0.
What's your takeaway?
Now, it's phenomenal.
Okay.
That's a big number.
Okay.
And shows you how resilient the economy is. Business is strong. Profits are booming. That's why the stock market is hitting all-time records in the middle of this war with high energy prices. I don't deny it. I'll just say this on energy. It's a small price to pay to take out Iran. It's a small price to pay to prevent Iran from any nuclear capabilities whatsoever. It's a small price to pay to hopefully engineer some kind of real regime change, because this is the most gruesome Nazi-like government we've seen in 100 years. So Americans, I think, should be very proud of what their president and military is doing here to take out Iran. And you see in this summit with Xi, he's not disagreeing. He's not, even though Xi and China helped to create Iran in the first place by buying 90% of their oil and financing everything Iran was doing, from missiles to nuclear weapons to enrichment and all the rest of it. He's not belly. You don't hear a peep out of him on that point. So it's a $5 gasoline, $4.50 gasoline. Okay, live with it. It's going to come way down once this war is over. My guess is, if after this summit is completed, you will see the completion of the bombing mission. There'll be additional combat. There'll be a completion of the whatever it's Project Freedom that will open up the Strait of Hormuz without any tolls. And the United States will take all of that over and control it for a good long while. I don't know what the rest of it's going to be, but I think they've been planning for this, actually, ironically, on the trip to Beijing on the airplane. So that's a very important point. This will not last forever. The oil prices, the gasoline prices will not last forever. Scott Bessent today said in Beijing, there'll be disinflation in the second half of the year. I believe he is right. I think we got a couple lousy months coming up on high inflation. Yes, we do.
Okay.
But I think it will end.
Well, that's very much in line with the New York Post editorial board today.
And that's what's so important about this economy.
I get it, but however,
we are a resilient economy. No one is close to us.
Okay.
We have resources. We can produce military weaponry and soldiers, men and women, like no other country in the world.
You give us a lot of room for optimism. Now, let me just finish off with this, because the board agrees with you and says April's inflation spikes no cause for panic, but only to finish off Iran fast. The point here is we can deal with this for a while, but President Trump has promised that this is a short-term situation.
Yes.
But how much longer can the consumer, I guess is my question, weather this?
Weather this? How about a year?
Okay.
All right. I'll give you a year. I mean, are you looking at these retail sales?
I am.
This is 3 months.
But I also saw the inflation report.
March and April were war months, were rising gasoline and energy months, and they're still growing at 9% plus over the past 3 months. I don't know if we'll get 4% GDP growth, but the Atlanta Fed is saying what we know now about the second quarter, it's a 4% quarter. Okay. Look, the first quarter was 2%. There's nothing wrong with that. I believe it will wind up being revised higher. We're in a business boom right now. I keep making this point. Profits are booming. Profits are the mother's milk of stock, the lifeblood of the economy. There's a reason these stock market indexes are rising. It's not fluff. It's not irrational exuberance. It's basic old-fashioned business profits. Look at the job reports that are coming in strong. I'm just saying, we can destroy Iran, which will do the entire world a favor, a big favor. We have the resources to do it. Our economy will not be damaged by this. We are resilient. We've had good low tax and deregulation policies and drill baby drill policies, and all these chickens are coming home to roost. Yes, I am an optimist about it, and I think the president deserves enormous credit for what he's trying to do. Mr. Xi's not even belly aching, perhaps. He's trying to stir the pot about Taiwan. We're not going to give up
Imagine they get
Taiwan.
stuff going through the Strait of Hormuz.
We are
What a
not
whole
going
new
to
world
give
we'd
up
be in.
Taiwan. President Xi, we will not give up
Copy
Taiwan.
that.
I'm sorry.
Got it. Well, I wish we could have heard all the conversations at those tables yesterday. CEOs, world leaders, and all. Larry, we'll see you.
We have a lot of Chinese restaurants. The president did point that out.
He sure did.
Always at the top of his numerical.
He sure did. Larry, we'll see you at 4 o'clock on FBN. Thank you so much. All right, John.
It is the one handshake that can shake the world. President Trump, Chinese President Xi holding what they called a very productive, nearly 2-hour meeting together on the first day of Trump's China summit. A visit, you saw it, dripping with pageantry and global power politics. Hundreds of children waving Chinese and American flags. The president seemed impressed with the Beijing charm offensive.
President Xi, I want to thank you very much. First of all, that was an honor like few have ever seen before. And I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
He's not wrong. The White House says the two leaders talked about stopping the flow of fentanyl, enhancing economic cooperation, and the war in Iran. President Trump also told Sean Hannity that Xi has offered his help in securing a peace deal in the region.
The issue, and you've been asked about it, and you've spoken about it, and that is China's support of Iran. How big a discussion was that today?
We discussed it. I mean, when you say support, they're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. But at the same time, he said, you know, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that. He'd like to see Hormuz Strait opened. He joked. He said, you know, it's sort of if they stopped it, then you stop them. But they'd like to see it open.
So that's China. Here back at home, not everyone is happy with Trump's leadership on the world stage. Whoopi Goldberg voicing a lot of displeasure with the president using a pretty graphic analogy. Take a listen.
I don't believe in anybody who is running this country right now. We have been devolved as a nation, I feel, because we are nationalists. I thought my description was
devolved is lovely.
Yes,
I
it was
didn't know if
just
you meant
clear.
castrated.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing.
Okay.
I don't have them, but I know it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But the idea that no one is in charge freaks me out.
All right, let's start with that. Emily, have we been deballed? Am I even allowed to say that? I don't know.
I personally have not been. You know, I think it's so laughable that the same talking head that helped cover up for Biden's ineptitude, that's when the United States was deballed. That was during the Biden administration. And so I put together a little list for her knowledge and for everyone's review of what exactly it looks like to be deballed and what exactly it looks like to operate from a position of strength, which is right now. So just as of today, the President Trump, has hosted 87 meetings with foreign leaders. And in President Biden's entire office, he hosted 36. Remember, he took hundreds of days that he napped in Rehoboth Beach while 18,000 terrorists flooded across the southern border, and we lost 360,000 minor children. Jill Biden ran meetings, recall. They closed every day at like 1 p.m., calling lids. Everyone mocked his schedule. And then you contrast that with President Trump. He has direct, and as he should, like responsibility for things like credit for multiple tariffs, border security, NATO spending, hostage release, Middle East ceasefire deals. And he is the one that has been in direct involvement in talks with Mexico and Canada and China and NATO allies and the Middle East. And remember, it was this media that complained that his pace was too fast and too hard for everyone to keep up with. He has issued 250 executive orders just in today. And the only president that matched his pace in the first year was FDR with EO. So I can go on, but it's so laughable to me and unfortunately emblematic of the mainstream media that no matter what, they will continue to cover for the president that was absolutely missing, the one that was derelict in duty, that abdicated his duty every day, that signed with an auto pen. And we have a president who is out there with the reporters, with the crowds, with the foreign heads of state that doesn't need to have Maloney guide him away because he has no idea where he's doing like they had to do with Biden. And somehow this is where we look weak on the world stage. For once, we have a presence and an involvement by this president in talks and negotiations and deals, and we are stronger for it because unlike Biden and unlike the prior presidents, this one is actually representative of the people's will, and he actually serves as a public servant instead of putting himself or his wife first.
Jesse, let's talk about this arrival ceremony. It was quite a production. You know, it was sort of impressive in its scope and its scale. The president kept talking about how happy he was to see these kids. He did look genuinely delighted. The president obviously has to give Xi like big kudos, right, for this. That's his role being there. We don't, though, however, have to do that here. And I would offer that it's awfully easy to put together impressive pageantry when you're running a commie regime that jails and kills political dissidents, people that disagree with you. You enslave a third of the population, and you can pretty much get people to do whatever you want.
You're saying our kids can't jump that high? Hey, we were just at the King's ceremony, and they had all the pomp and circumstance. They had all the colonial guys with the guns. I think we put on a pretty good show. I mean, I don't think we're lacking in pageantry.
Who?
The United States. And what's the big deal? These are kids jumping. I
didn't say
it's not like they were making the world spin on it. I don't know. I don't care about the pageant. No one has been deballed. Deballed would be Kamala in charge, literally. She said the right things on the Strait. Doesn't want it told, doesn't want it closed. He's not going to help the Iranians and might even help us, but we'll see what he does. He said his position on Taiwan. We said our position on Taiwan doesn't make a difference. Rubio warned him, don't make a grave mistake, and then said that the Chinese military's aiming to grow as great as the U.S. military into a global power. So we'll have to navigate that. I think it might be even easier to deal with the Chinese than the Russians because there's so much trade between us. But the problem here now is the trade only goes one way. The politicians here opened up America to China, and China shut its doors. So Trump goes over with 30 CEOs, and he got Xi to say, we are open for business. So we're going to be selling them chips and planes, and they can all put it on the Visa and MasterCard. That's great. I'm actually thinking about having How I Saved the World translated into Mandarin. We can put it on Amazon, and everyone in China can read about Jesse Waters. I hear they're big fans over there. The Chinese have made major inroads into the American restaurant scene. But get this, there are over 20,000 McDonald's, Taco Bells, and KFCs in China. And they're growing every year by the thousands. And once the United States gets fast food into a country, that's it. Fried chicken, Big Macs, chalupas. They start listening to our music, watching our movies. They start marrying our women. I'm just kidding. We don't allow that. But that's basically now an American colony. We got them hooked, and it's pretty much over. The Chinese have a history of expanding and then collapsing, expanding and then collapsing. So Trump, the strategy is ride it out peacefully as they expand alongside them peacefully. And when they collapse, you feast on their carcass.
Okay. Whatever you say.
Exactly.
Greg, a lot of people today, the foreign policy analysts were like criticizing, or not criticizing, but they were aghast, I guess. Aghast that she...
How much was that gas?
If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But they were aghast and upset that she made these threats about Taiwan in the presence of President Trump. I would proffer that if you were surprised by what he said about Taiwan, which was basically a warning to the U.S. not to think about getting involved and interfering as they illegally invade a sovereign country and try and take them over. If you didn't know that was coming, then it's like you've been living under a rock, because that's all the Chinese have been talking about to America for like 10 years at this point.
Oh, well, you raised a good point that you just answered. I want to talk about Whoopi.
That's taken already.
Whoopi, no, that's not how it works. Whoopi accuses Trump of castrating America. Sorry, Whoopi. Guys stopped getting erections around you years before Trump got into office. Do not blame him for your dateless weekends. Who is she comparing Trump to? Emily went over all of his achievements, but you have to look at how world leaders react to him. You think no one's in charge of the United States? Trump's in charge of the U.S., and it looks like whenever he's around world leaders, he's in charge of them too. They treat him like a rock star. The only people being deballed in this country are the children of liberals who trans them for virtue points at the wine club. Trump's done a lot of things. And one of the things we have to revisit is think about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, fentanyl overdoses were racking up 70 to 100,000 deaths a year. These are people who aren't just junkies and you go, well, they're seeking their own death. These are one and doneers, people that get a Valium or get something, but it's off the street and they die. Biden didn't lift a finger. He didn't do a thing. So here's the little fentanyl history for you. Trump declared the opioid crisis in 2017. He had a agreement with China in 2019 to halt fentanyl exporting, and it kind of worked. But then the supply shifted to the cartels. So he expanded the border wall, remained in Mexico. He did all the things that the Democrats hate. And then over time, fentanyl decreased. And then Trump gets reelected. He really kicks it in, explicitly ties tariffs to trafficking and then fentanyl trafficking. Then he designates the drug as a WMD and cartels as terrorists. We're going out, we're bombing the crap out of them. 60% of fentanyl trafficking drops in the southern border. Lives, thousands of lives are being saved by Trump because of this. And I bring this up because the late Scott Adams would be very pleased and very proud because he lost his stepson to a fentanyl overdose. And when he died, he said he would make it his mission to get Trump elected, get Trump to understand this threat, get him to China, and get him to focus on the precursors and also to kill the dealers. None of this would have happened under Ding Dong Kamala. He has literally saved thousands of lives. And again, I'm not talking about just the drug addicts that you see on the streets. I'm talking about people's sons and daughters who went to a frat party. Yeah.
So you want to ask, because they're telling me we don't have a lot of time. I'd say a couple of things. The president 24 hours ago or 36 hours ago when he left, he stood outside the White House and said that the only thing on his mind was trying to keep, with regard to Iran, was trying to keep nuclear weapons or eliminate their ability to get a nuclear weapon. When he was asked about people's financial situation, Democrats jumped on him. I give him some grace. I understand what he's saying. But his tone has shifted dramatically since being in front of Xi. And I don't understand. The president seems to be enamored with some of these things. Xi went right at the president and said, Taiwan is the #1 thing on my mind. If you guys stand in our way, you and America get in our way, our relationship will devolve to conflict and maybe even worse. The president said he approached the idea of the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is critical, but the president didn't say that 36 hours ago when he left, Julian. He said that his #1 concern was nuclear weapons. He didn't ask, to my knowledge, and I haven't seen yet, and the president still has another day, and I'm rooting for him in this trip, has not asked President Xi to help him with this nuclear weapon issue with the Iranians. Two, you think about the backdrop in the world today, and you did a great job, both of you did a great job of talking about a lot of the accomplishments, and I give the president great kudos on the border and with fentanyl. But the UK right now is in political upheaval because their prime minister appointed somebody. They didn't do an adequate background check on. It looks like the government could be in turmoil. Russia attacked Kyiv with a bigger set of military strikes than they have since the beginning of this war, killing at least nine people and a few children. The Philippines had a shooting in their capital yesterday. I hope we get a little more subsidy. I want to sell more soybeans and I want to sell more beef and I want to sell more airplanes to the Chinese. But if we don't get a way to have us as partners, have them help us with what's happening in Iran right now, this will not be a successful trip. I hope that CEOs on there get everything they want. But if we find ourselves with everyday Americans with $5.50 gallon gasoline between now and the end of this month, this trip will not have been a success.
Well, there's a lot of hope because the U.S. and China's interests are the same in getting the strait open. So whether the president brings it up with Xi or not, you know that the seniors on the sidelines are going to do.
I'm not arguing with you. I want the president to do it. I didn't hear that this first day. And that's when I'm hoping the second day of meetings, we'll get some updates and progress on that.
With that, we bring in Masih Alinejad, Iranian-American journalist and activist. She survived 3 assassination attempts by the regime here in the United States. So, Masih, what is your message as there's so much focus on these talks in China and so much focus on trying to reach some kind of deal to end the Iran war at this point? What's your take?
We cannot end the war without ending the root cause of this endless war in the region, which is the Islamic Republic. Look, I keep hearing a lot of people saying that we should separate human rights from nuclear talk. How? With a regime that actually killing innocent people, executing men and women simply for demanding freedom. The regime do not have any pity for their own people. You want to get a deal with them? How you can trust them? How? Literally, how? And we're talking about China is the country that buying the Islamic Republic's oil when the Islamic Republic is under US sanction. This is the regime, China's government, sending technology surveillance to identify, to Islamic Republic, to basically identify unveiled women. Martha, like you are a criminal. If you walk in the street in Tehran, Chinese government send their camera, the face recognition technology surveillance to arrest you. And now, how come that even President Trump do not mention about human rights? He was the only president literally said that he is going to help the people of Iran. People of Iran are getting executed right now. You cannot use diplomacy because the regime. But
let me ask you this. A lot of people look at the JCPOA and they fear that this deal that they're working on is very similar to it. This is Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, with his take on what he thinks should happen now with the Iran situation. Watch.
Not only did I think it was working, even Israeli intelligence thought it was working. Even our intelligence services thought it was working. So there's no dispute that it worked, and we didn't have to kill a whole bunch of people or shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
What's your reaction?
Nothing is going to work with the Islamic Republic. I want to talk about now that we really should make sure that President Trump is not going to do the same mistake as President Obama. Now the history, Judge President Obama, the people of Iran, literally, I'm going to say it. Maybe you say this is a very strong word. They really hate President Obama. Why? Because they were in the streets saying that you can't trust this regime. And President Obama, after 10 years, made an apology saying that he should have trusted the people of Iran. He should have supported the people of Iran. So this is the case. I was in Copenhagen Democracy Summit. You know what, Martha? Immediately when I arrived, European basically were talking about President Trump. We're criticizing the United States simply for removing the Ayatollahs, the killers, where they say Ayatollahs. And they were saying that, yeah, we said that we need to keep the doors of diplomacy open. And I said to them, I'm going to repeat it here, Europe is coward. And that's why Europe is not a safe place anymore. It's a hunting ground for dictators. More than 800 people being the target of either assassination plot or kidnapping plot on European soil by the Islamic Republic sending assassins. Does America want to repeat the same mistake? President Trump want to do the same mistake? That's my concern.
I have a question for you. You know, when our viewers listen to you speak, and no doubt their hearts break when they see what's happening in the streets. They see these executions happening. But I think a lot of them have this question: what is going to change the dynamic? They don't care. This Islamic Republic, you know better than anyone, they're digging in their heels. They don't care what happens to their people. They cut the internet off from everybody. Let's put up those numbers while we're doing this. They don't care what happens. All they want to do is hang in and survive, probably until President Trump isn't president anymore. What changes that? How can we stop that? What is your advice on that?
You know, to be honest, my concern is the same, that the Islamic Republic is buying time because they're pretty sure if they have another president, for instance, if they have Democrats here, it's going to be easier. At least President Trump is not handing out billions of dollars to this regime. They know it very well. If they can buy time using diplomacy.
So what's the answer?
The answer is very clear. President Trump and Europe should get united, having common strategic plan to end it, to help the people of Iran to end the Islamic Republic. I'm not saying that President Trump go there and save the people of Iran. I said that to Europeans as well. I'm not saying that Europeans send your soldiers there, but at least stop the Islamic Republic sending their soldiers on your own soil. So when I see now European and American are fighting against each other, they pick a fight every single day, while China, Russia, and Islamic Republic, they're working together to survive. That's the
and there's
problem.
no doubt that China and Russia watch that. They love to see the U.S. and Europe fighting each other because it keeps them distracted from all of this. Masi, thank you very much. It's always good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for always shining. I mean, this is beautiful because people of Iran watching Fox News, and you gave voice to Mohammad Abbasi before he was hanged. You mentioned about him in your show, And yesterday he was hanged. His daughter, Mohammad Abbas, his daughter, innocent daughter, is in prison, received 25-year sentence. We need to talk about them, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Masi.
From pageantry to policy, President Trump wasn't wasting a second of time in China, and he's making sure the world sees it, from high-stakes talks with President Xi and a high-level state dinner to walks with China's leader at various state and site visits. It's a fine line he's walking. On the one hand, he's holding firm on America's red lines. On the other hand, holding on to an important relationship.
The American and Chinese people share much in common. We value hard work. We value courage and achievement. We love our families and we love our countries. Together, we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness and peace for our children. We love our children, this region and the world. It's a special world with the two of us united and together.
That message was echoed by China's President Xi. This is the voice of a translator.
We both believe that the China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals.
China's certainly giving Trump a welcome befitting of that status, bringing out its military, its youth, and its enthusiasm. And President Trump took note.
I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing, and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you.
He also pointed out the cultural crossover between the two nations.
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say. Just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
And of course, no foreign trip would be complete for the president without the art of the deal.
What does he want from the U.S.?
A lot of things. We talked about a lot of things. Too many things to discuss, but a lot of things. We had a very good meeting, but we want things from them. One thing he agreed to today, he's going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing. Boeing. 200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs. It's a lot. Boeing wanted 150. He got 200. He said, I think it was a commitment. I mean, sort of like a statement, but I think it was a commitment.
Another commitment, according to the president, is China's pledge to withhold military aid from Iran.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that. He'd like to see Hormuz Strait opened. I said, well, we didn't stop it. They did it, then we stopped them. Sort of interesting. He joked. He said, it's sort of, they stopped it, then you stopped them. But they'd like to see it opened. But they actually closed it. He didn't like the fact that they're charging tolls. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know who would pay them. I mean, where do they put the money? The country's decimated. They're charging tolls. Where's the money going?
But when it comes to Taiwan, both sides are digging in. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. isn't budging.
We always respond by saying anything that would compel or force a change in what we have now would be problematic. And we would certainly, our policies on that have not changed.
Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy is in Beijing. So, Peter, what's next on the trip?
Well, you guys just played this video, but I was standing a few feet away from President Trump and President Xi when that long line of Chinese children started jumping up and down and cheering to greet them. And President Trump had about as big a smile on his face as I've ever seen. And I see him every day. So the visit got off to a great start. There was a lot of pomp and circumstance, but now we know once they got behind closed doors, there were some disagreements that came to light.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan, Mr. President?
They did talk Taiwan. The Chinese readout says President Xi stressed that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in the China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts. So, faced with the possibility of China launching a military operation to take over this self-governing island, Secretary Rubio now says, don't do it.
We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States.
The well-rehearsed security plan kind of fell apart on the edges of the Trump-Xi meetings. We've got some video that shows one example of a dispute between the U.S. press corps and the security forces on the ground here. The press pool in this video was being prevented from joining the Trump motorcade, but ultimately, after lots of pushing and lots of shouting, everyone has gotten where they need to be. Will.
Fascinating behind-the-scenes video. Thank you for that, Peter Ducey. All right, meantime, China also making headlines here at home. Liu Jianwang, better known as Harry Liu, but best known as the man accused of operating a police station for the Chinese government in New York City, was convicted yesterday of acting as an illegal foreign agent. A jury also convicting him on obstruction of justice for deleting messages that prosecutors say included orders from Beijing to silence, harass, and intimidate pro-democracy dissidents. He faces up to 30 years in prison. The conviction is a timely reminder of China's covert ambitions and capabilities as we get messages of cooperation and appreciation throughout Trump's visit. So joining me now to help put all this into context is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow and author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordon Chang. Gordon, it's good to see you in person.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Will.
So let's talk about, first of all, this meeting, this bilateral meeting, President Trump, President Xi Jinping. For both sides, what is priority number one? What is success?
Well, for Xi Jinping, priority number one is trade. So I think he wants to extend the trade truce that they negotiated last October in Busan, South Korea. Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption as the basis of the Chinese economy. Consumption is the basis of almost every economy in the world. That means Xi needs to export in order to have growth. And we account for something like a third, maybe 30, 31% of global consumer spending. So we are absolutely indispensable. He needs access to the U.S. market. There's no replacement for us. President Trump can deny it. So for him, that's the most important thing.
And for President Trump?
It's probably trade as well, because this is going to be an issue that is going to affect a lot of Americans in the run-up to the midterms. So I think both sides want to extend that trade truce for at least a little while longer.
Okay, so trade is probably priority number one for both sides in this meeting. But then come the various other issues, not all small, some very large, like the issue of Taiwan. And that readout from Xi Jinping from China suggests that he was very, very direct. And he was, in fact, perhaps even one could describe it as aggressive towards President Trump when it comes to Taiwan.
Yes, and Xi Jinping is very bold and very brazen. Taiwan, of course, is important for Xi Jinping because he's based his personal legitimacy on annexing Taiwan. But for us, we can't let that happen. I mean, it's not just the question that one Taiwanese company makes 92% of the world's most sophisticated semiconductors, but it's also that Taiwan prevents the Chinese military, the Air Force and the Navy from surging into the Western Pacific where we don't want them. We don't want them off the coast. In the center of our Western defense perimeter. Plus, also, after the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, Taiwan is a test of American credibility and resolve around the world. So it's not just an East Asia question, it's a question around the world.
Okay, speaking of aggressive, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said this relationship, which Xi Jinping has suggested should be a partnership and not a rivalry, but we also know the realism of the world, that it is a rivalry. Secretary of State Rubio has said, that's fine. We're happy to see you prosper, China, but not at the expense of the United States. Watch this.
They believe they will be the world's most powerful country. They'll surpass the United States, and they have a plan to do it. and they're executing on that plan. And I don't blame them. If I were the Chinese government, I'd have the same plan. We, on the other hand, don't view it that way. And we don't want to see anything. We're not trying to constrain China, but their rise cannot come at our expense. Their rise cannot come at our fall. So there's an area where we're just going to have a difference of opinion. But when that plan is in conflict with the national interest of the United States, we need to do what's right for the United States. And that'll come up on this trip. But more importantly, that'll be a feature of this relationship for a long time.
Such a fascinating relationship, isn't it, Gordon? In so many ways dependent upon one another, in so many ways rivals on the world stage.
Yes, the Communist Party believes that it cannot exist, it cannot be secure without the United States. And today, Xi Jinping made a reference to ancient Greece, the Thucydides trap. And that is a story of a rising power challenging a declining but ruling state. So what Xi Jinping was saying to Trump to his face today was, you know, you're the leader of a declining state. And this is bold. You know, I've never heard somebody do that before to President Trump. And that shows you that deterrence is breaking down. And when deterrence breaks down, nothing good happens. So this is important for the United States, as Secretary Rubio said, is to really push back hard.
That's an ominous way to look at this, deterrence breaking down. Before we go, there's all these other issues as well that President Trump has brought up with Xi Jinping that are important to people in America. There is, as we mentioned, the Chinese spying station in New York City. There's the mayor of Arcadia, California, who is working with the CCP. There are political prisoners over in Hong Kong and in China. And there is China's support, or under the surface support, for Iran. How many of these other issues do you expect to meet with any level of success between Trump and Xi?
We won't know that for quite some time. I mean, President Trump will raise these issues, but we don't know whether China will actually comply. And we don't even know what they're going to say. You know, in addition to that list, we have found 2 Chinese biological weapons facilities on American soil. One in Reedley, California, the other in Las Vegas. We know there's a third one out there that the FBI doesn't know about. So, yeah, this is subversion on American soil, should be added to the list.
Absolutely. There's so many issues. Behind trade, there's so many issues that have to deal with between the United States and China. Gordon Chang, it's always good to see you in person.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. All right, before we...
The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand.
Together, we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness, and peace for our children.
So that was the evening toast here in Beijing, and welcome to our coverage between 2 global superpowers as it continues. Presidents Trump and Xi praising one another while pushing for increased cooperation between the world's biggest economies. Our coverage continues now, just about the halfway point of the summit here in Beijing, China. I'm Bill Hemmer, and Sandra, it's good to see you all week yet again today. Good morning there.
And good evening to you there, Bill. Good morning from New York. I'm Sandra Smith. Dana has the day off. This is America's Newsroom. So President Trump wrapping this whirlwind day in China. It featured plenty of pageantry, but the most important moment happened behind closed doors.
That's right. Trump and Xi spoke for more than 2 hours. They tackled a lot of issues, we are told, based on the statements that came out from the U.S. and the statement that came out on behalf of the Iranians. Those topics include trade and U.S. weapons sales to Taiwan and the need to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Sandra?
All critical talking points. The White House characterized the talks as positive so far, and that was further evidenced by this moment at the banquet.
Tonight, it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th, and we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast to the rich and enduring ties between the American and Chinese people. It's a very special relationship, and I want to thank you again. This has been an amazing period of time. Thank you, President Xi.
It has been quite the day. Jackie Heinrich from the White House is here with me, watching all of it in Beijing. And good evening and good morning to you for our viewers back home. Let me ask you the obvious. Halfway point, how's it going?
Ooh, I don't know if I can put a grade on it. I'm sure each side has their own idea of how it's going. And looking at the statements in public and after private meetings, there's a lot that we can sort of chew over here. the statements from both sides, the comments in front of cameras have been friendly. They've been positive. However, behind closed doors, they obviously tackled some thornier issues. Readout indicates that President Trump did not budge on the Taiwan issue, and China really had some thoughts about that. We knew that Xi was going to probably dangle that issue to try to extract something from the U.S. in exchange for cooperation on Iran. The Chinese readout of the meeting warns that Taiwan is the most important issue for U.S.-China relations, and, quote, if it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. Taiwan independence and cross-strait peace are as irreconcilable as fire and water. The U.S. side must exercise extra caution in handling the Taiwan question. The readout also claims that Xi referenced the Thucydides trap in the bilateral meeting. That refers to how tensions between a rising power and a ruling power have often resulted in war. Now, those are some very sharp words compared with the White House readout, which called the meeting good.
And it really was a magnificent welcome like none other, and for so graciously hosting us on this very historic state visit. We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today.
U.S. officials made clear in the lead up to this trip that U.S. policy toward Taiwan was not up for negotiation. But this readout from the White House indicates that President Trump got Xi to agree that, quote, the Strait of Hormuz must remain open to support the free flow of energy. President Xi also made clear China's opposition to the militarization of the strait and any effort to charge a toll for its use. And he expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. It's not clear whether more purchases of U.S. oil will mean fewer Chinese purchases of Iranian oil. And Xi referenced past tensions in his remarks as well.
President Trump and I, fully aware of the expectations of our two nations and the international community, have had multiple meetings and phone calls and kept China-U.S. relations generally stable. We both believe that the China-U.S. relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation.
Final point, while this was going on, Russia made clear that they are China's friend too and announced that Putin will be visiting China soon.
Okay, so it goes back and forth. Jackie, it's great to see you, and thank you for your coverage tonight. I want to bring in Hugh Hewitt right now, Fox News contributor. Hugh, good evening to you. Good morning where you are back in the U.S. Sean Hannity interviewed Marco Rubio on Air Force One. It aired last night. I just want you to listen to the question and the way he answered this. Watch here.
Do you view China as our top geopolitical foe?
Yeah, it's both our top political challenge geopolitically, and it's also the most important relationship for us to manage. I mean, it's a big, powerful country. It's going to continue to grow, but we're going to have interests of ours that are going to be in conflict with interests of theirs. And to avoid wars and maintain peace and stability in the world, the president's going to continue to do so. There might be some areas of cooperation, too, and we want to make sure we don't walk away from those.
All right, Hugh. Okay, how do you measure that up at this point?
Well, I think Secretary Rubio, and good evening to you, Bill. I guess about 9 o'clock at night in Beijing. I think Secretary Rubio actually captured how delicate this is, just like General Secretary Xi did in his remarks. They don't want to mess up the world, and the two strongest powers in the world are getting along fairly well. The White House readout of the 2.5-hour meeting stressed trade, especially agricultural trade, but it also said we need the strait open and Iran can't have a nuke. So we're making our points. General Secretary Xi's readout is don't mess with Taiwan, don't get upset about Taiwan, let's manage that carefully. They're both the strongest men in the world. They know that. They look at each other and they see an equal. And I don't think anything's gone amiss. In fact, the announcement of the September summit in D.C. is great news for stability, bad news for traffic in the Beltway, but great news for stability. So you're in the middle of a nice meeting as opposed to, Reagan walking out of Gorbachev in Reykjavik in 1986. It's better that it goes well than it goes badly. but I don't see any breakthroughs here, and I'm not sure if you do either. The mention of the Thucydides trap, Bill, that's interesting. Xi is saying we're the rising power. Nah, not so soon. Look at what happened to all the systems and components you sent to Iran. They didn't do much on their air defense, did they? So they're not quite rising as fast as they think they are, but they're trying.
Okay. So you heard the quote that Jackie read on the issue of Taiwan. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, did an interview that aired about 3 hours ago on CNBC. He had a lot to say about AI and working on a framework to make sure that bad actors don't get a hold of this technology. But he also addressed the Taiwan issue too, okay? Here's how he answered that in part. Watch here.
President Trump is understands the issues here and understands the sensitivities around all this. And anyone who's been saying otherwise does not understand the negotiating style of Donald Trump.
So what he also said, Hugh, is that the president will have more to say about Taiwan in the coming days. You got a $14 billion military aid package out there. What more does he say, perhaps after he leaves here in China and Beijing?
Well, I certainly hope he says we're doing that. We're not deterred from selling weapons to our allies of 75 years standing. Taiwan has always marked the most delicate aspect of these summits. Going back to President Nixon's first visit to China in 1972, they have to talk around it because we stand with Taiwan. They claim Taiwan is part of China. There's strategic ambiguity at work. If we sell $14 billion in arms, though, and we have Admiral Paparo saying he'll make the strait a hellscape if China tries to cross it in a hostile fashion, we're not changing our position. They're not changing their position. That's fine, provided that nobody changes their position. I'm looking forward to President Trump reaffirming what the traditional American position has been, which is Taiwan it's one nation, two countries, two flags, and we're not walking away from Taiwan. I hope that's what he says.
Got it. Thank you, Hugh. It's nice to see you. Thanks for coming back. We'll talk very soon. Hugh Hewitt, thank you.
First to our chief national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin. She's for us on Capitol Hill. Hey, Jen.
Hi, John. Well, most of the sensitive answers came in classified briefings earlier this morning. Admiral Brad Cooper, the head of CENTCOM, pushed back on questions from Democrats about Iran's ballistic missile stockpile, how much is left of that and its launchers, how many have survived following a New York Times report based on leaked intelligence.
Iran continues to have as much as 70 to 75% of its missiles and launchers available to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
What I would say from my perspective is the numbers that I've seen in open source are not accurate.
Today, Iran captured another commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, but Admiral Cooper said it will take a decade for Iran to rebuild its navy.
Is Iran now less of a threat than it was 11 months ago?
They are significantly less of a threat.
Is it fair to say that the Iranian regime is still a revolutionary terrorist regime even after all the deaths of their senior leaders?
They are. I think it's also fair to say across every element of national power, they've been significantly degraded.
There were also questions about civilian casualties and why the Pentagon disbanded its Civilian Protection Center of Excellence.
How did we then bomb 22 schools?
There's no indication that we have that has been corroborated.
How many schools have we bombed?
There is one active civilian casualty investigation from the 13,629 munitions.
So how do you explain the publicly available information that 22 schools have been hit and multiple hospitals?
There's no way that we can corroborate that. No indication of that whatsoever, Senator.
What is not clear is whether military operations will resume and what the plan is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. John?
Well, a lot may hinge on the outcome of this meeting with President Xi. We will see. Jen Griffin for us. Jen, thank you.
Hey, everyone.
What did you guys think about that, you guys? Did y'all like that? Doc, what? All right, you guys. Let's go. Where am I going? Let's go here.
CNN Business senior reporter David Goldman to make it make sense. He is tracking the 5 key numbers steering this summit. So, David, help us break through the noise. What do we need to know?
Yeah, Kristen talked about sticky issues. They are sticky indeed, because the first number you need to understand is 600 million. That's the number of Chinese AI users, according to China. That is why President Trump brought with him Elon Musk and Jensen Huang and Tim Cook. There's a massive market to be tapped in China with the key technology for U.S. national security, and that is AI. The second number you need to understand is 93%. That is the control of the rare earth market that China has. We know that the United States needs to restock its weapons after the Iran war. What makes those weapons work? Rare earth minerals. China has control over that. That will be a big sticking point. 80% is the next number you need to know. That is the percentage of Iranian oil that China buys. It's probably even more than that. That was before the war. China needs the Strait of Hormuz to be reopened because it relies so heavily on Iranian oil. President Trump knows that. That will be a big point of leverage as well. $25 billion is a big number. That's the amount that Taiwan just approved to buy U.S. military equipment. You just heard Kristen talking about how serious she is about this issue. That will be a topic of consideration as well. And then 10% is the last number you need to know. 10% is the tariff that the United States has put on Chinese goods. Now, remember, a year ago it was 145%. It's come down a lot because the Supreme Court says Trump doesn't have the ability to put any tariff he wants. He's lost a little leverage there, Pam.
David Goldman, thank you for helping us better understand everything that's going on, as always.
CNN's Fareed Zakaria is also here, the host of course, Fareed Zakaria at GPS. Fareed, what are you going to be watching for in this meeting in terms of, are we going to see Xi Jinping say something directly to the president about Iran? What are you expecting?
I suspect the Chinese are very formal. They very rarely will reveal publicly what they are really talking about privately. I don't know if you remember, there was a time when Justin Trudeau let slip what he and Xi Jinping had been talking about, and she was visibly upset about it and told him that's not how this is supposed to work. So I suspect what we will see will be all formalities and that kind of thing. Tough for President Trump because he likes to actually just tell you what's going on. I suspect the issue that Trump will want to come away from is some kind of economic deal where there's a talk about the Chinese buying goods, investing in America. The Chinese will want some lowering of tariffs. The hot button, of course, is Taiwan. The Chinese have indicated that they would like to see some shift in America's position on Taiwan. I doubt that they're going to get something on it. So my guess is that this is going to be a little bit more practical and nitty-gritty and not a transformative set of meetings. But, I suspect that there will be progress on most of the big economic issues that both sides want.
Well, when you were in China last month talking to officials ahead of this meeting, what did they tell you about what to expect?
What they were hoping for was some movement on Taiwan. What they were hoping for was some movement on tariffs. They believe that China unjustly has, these very high tariffs against it. It's a little complicated now because so many of Trump's tariffs have been rolled back by the courts that it's not exactly clear what the tariffs on China are, but they are higher than other countries. And he certainly has the ways he can get them higher. But for them, the main issues were Taiwan, tariffs, and to a certain extent, a sense from the United States that there was a workable relationship going forward, not a kind of race to demonize China, decouple, etc. For Trump, I think it's, somebody said, well, what was it? The 3 Bs, beans, there are 3 sets of goods beans, Boeing, and something else. He's trying to get the Chinese to buy American stuff. And agriculture is a big part of it. Aircraft is a big part of it. And if he can get them to announce some big purchases, that's what he's going to be looking for.
Well, I mean, he also wants them to open up the Chinese economy to these American CEOs and a lot of the CEOs that are traveling with him. I mean, you just heard Kristen listing them out: Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Jensen Huang, from X, Apple, and Nvidia. Also, we've got reps from Meta, Boeing, those other major companies. What does that look like when they're all gathered there, when they are eventually, all in front of Xi Jinping together?
Well, a lot of those companies have businesses in China. I mean, Tesla sells lots of cars in China, and it's facing stiff competition. Tesla's market share is declining not because the Chinese government is stopping them, but because the Chinese have a ferociously competitive EV market at home. Most of the ones you mentioned, I think, other than Meta, actually do operate there. But you're right, Trump is looking for more market access to China. My sense, Caitlin, is if it's about this kind of stuff, the Chinese are happy to deal. They're happy to be transactional. They're happy to say, in return for you lowering tariffs this much, we'll allow the American banks to own 10% more of their joint ventures in China. The issue that they find with Trump is he's very unpredictable. He's very disruptive. And he does things like the Iran war, which completely disrupt and upend their planning. I mean, the Chinese get a lot of imported energy out of the Persian Gulf. And I think they find that it's the wild card of Trump that they find harder to understand and deal with. Trump, as a transactional businessman, they're happy to cut a deal.
We're learning more about the first day of talks between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The two men toasting each other today at a state banquet in Beijing and praising the long, sometimes strained relationship between the two countries. Xi and Trump both emphasizing the value of cooperation between the world's two economic superpowers. And Xi even seemingly reaching out to the president's base in these comments through a translator. Listen to this.
Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
Also new today, a red line over Taiwan. China's state media was reporting that Xi warned President Trump that Taiwan is the most important issue between the two countries. And Xi says if mishandled, could create, quote, a very dangerous situation, end quote. The Chinese Communist Party has long vowed to unify the island with the mainland, even if it requires military force. CNN's Kristen Holmes has more from Beijing.
This is an incredibly consequential meeting, particularly when you get to the top two topics, which are Taiwan and Iran. We heard a readout from state media saying that President Xi has issued somewhat of a veiled threat to the United States over Taiwan, saying it was the single most important issue when it comes to U.S.-China relations. And on top of that, that if it was handled poorly, it would create instability and be dangerous. We also know President Trump was expected to push President Xi to help with Iran, to pressure Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, Iran and China have a close relationship, and to potentially pressure them even into signing a peace deal. Now, what we heard from the White House, from a White House official, saying essentially that President Xi agreed with President Trump that the Strait of Hormuz should be opened and that Iran shouldn't have any nuclear capability. That's not new. We've already heard President Xi himself say that the Strait of Hormuz should be open. He's losing a lot of money. That's where he gets a significant amount of his oil and gas. But in addition to that, he's also said that he is happy that Iran has agreed to have a commitment not to have any kind of nuclear capabilities. So that part wasn't new. So really what we're looking for now is the nitty gritty and sticky details of what that conversation looks like, and if they've even had it yet, because they still have tomorrow another bilateral meeting, and this one is expected, I'm told, to be much smaller, and they are going to be hammering out some of the details. And one of the things to keep in mind is President Trump feels most powerful when he's in this kind of small setting, looking straight into the eyes of a leader, feels like he has his negotiating power. It's not one of these giant tables that we saw kind of spanning with 30 people on each side. So that will be something we're watching for too, how they come out of that meeting. And if we do get any sort of details on what was promised other than statements they've both kind of said already out loud.
Kristen Holmes, thank you very much. Kristen's in Beijing.
I'm Nick Schifrin. Welcome to China, Power and Prosperity.
I would love to watch that documentary someday. Well, again. So those are some of the key takeaways from Donald Trump meeting with China. Okay. Here we go.
Hey, Todd and Carly, good morning to you. And we just got a readout from the White House on this big bilateral meeting between the two presidents. So I'll read a couple of notes that I've taken away from this statement. They talked about expanding market access for American businesses into China. Remember, the president brought this delegation of 16 CEOs from different business and tech backgrounds. They also talked about wanting more progress on stopping the flow of fentanyl. That's something the president brought up. Now, the Chinese purchases of American agricultural products was also something that was brought up in these discussions. And President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. That's a really big takeaway. So we're going to focus on that as well. Also, both countries agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And after reading through this readout, there was really nothing in there that said that China was going to help pressure Iran in any way to ending the conflict. We were wondering if that was going to come up. It has been an incredibly busy day for the president, touring around all over Beijing. The president began his day with a visit to the Great Hall of People at the heart of the city, where he was greeted by President Xi. The delegation heard the national anthem along with a 21-gun salute. And the two leaders then had a bilateral meeting. And the president commented on his relationship with Xi. Watch.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together.
So once the bilateral was over, we actually got several statements from the Chinese side almost immediately. This is a not so thinly veiled warning from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman on Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, which, by the way, gets a ton of its defense weapons from the U.S. This is what she wrote. President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Now, here's the moment a reporter shouts a question at the two leaders about Taiwan, and watch what happens next.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah, neither wanted to say anything about it. Meanwhile, Iran looming in the background as a report overnight indicates that Iran may have taken a vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. While President Trump says he does not need Xi's help in ending the conflict, administration officials did go into this bilat saying that they were hoping to see China play a role, considering that it buys the largest amount of Iranian crude.
We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling. The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through but others not it's easier said than done. It's a huge source of instability. It threatens to destabilize Asia more than any other part of the world. It's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role.
And remember, there were a huge contingency of CEOs that were present at the ceremony today. We saw them leaving the bilateral early, meaning that the president did what he said. He was going to make his first ask to Xi to open up China to these companies. Of course, the guys, they want to do business in China as long as it's safe to do business in China. The state banquet is up next. And then the first interview with Sean Hannity airs later tonight. We will find out much more directly from the president on what he got out of President Xi today.
Yeah, which
Back
will
to you.
certainly be something to watch, and a great wrap up, Aisha, of what's taking place so far. Notable and very interesting to hear what is coming out of China, with a heavy emphasis on Taiwan, and the United States focusing, of course, on the economy, Iran and fentanyl, not mentioning Taiwan at all. But the president, as you just played, said that the meeting went great. And now it's on to dinner time coming up pretty soon with the state banquet. Aisha Hasni live for us, 12 hours ahead in Beijing. Aisha, thank you so much. Let's bring in the director of the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, Jeff Smith. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. So want to get your overall thoughts on what's taken place so far and your read on what's coming out, both from the White House and from China.
Well, I'll tell you, so far, I like what I'm hearing. We're getting sort of standard stock diplomatic language out of the Chinese side. We have heard comments on Taiwan, but what we heard from the Chinese spokesman is the standard fair diplomatic talking points that Chinese side tends to give their American counterparts in almost any meeting. They sort of say the U.S. staying out of the Taiwan issue is the key to stability in the relationship. I was not particularly concerned by anything that I heard there. And as far as I can tell, the U.S. side has not offered any strategic concessions on Taiwan. And so the sort of principle of first do no harm applies when we're talking about Taiwan. And here I think that's been satisfied. Hopefully we can move to sort of more constructive points of conversation, like opening up market access in China for U.S. exports.
Your read and my read are exactly the same. I'm just going to couch it in different terms. A lot of generalities, not a lot of specifics. And that leads to this. Will anything of substance, any specifics, truly be accomplished so long as both sides refuse to budge on Taiwan, Jeff?
I don't think anything positive is going to be accomplished on Taiwan. What I do think there is opportunity for is sort of tactical horse trading on things. You know, there are certain things you can do with the Chinese. You can negotiate on things like lower tariff rates, better market access, agricultural exports. If China wants to buy more U.S. soybeans, if China wants to buy more Boeing airplanes or U.S. oil and gas, I am fine with that. What I don't want to negotiate on is strategically sensitive issues like Taiwan. I don't want to be giving up strategically important U.S. products like U.S. advanced chips. And so far, we haven't seen any major concessions by the U.S. side. I hope that holds.
One of the big things to come out of this meeting that we just learned is that President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to avoid being so reliant on the Strait of Hormuz. Your reaction to that fact?
Hey, I'm fine with that. The more that China wants to be dependent on U.S. energy exports, that's okay with me. Like I said, there are things that we can horse trade with China on. There are even exports that China can do in the United States that don't necessarily affect the strategic balance of power, that don't affect American security or American prosperity. We're willing to buy more sort of textile exports from China. What we don't necessarily want is Chinese strategic investments in the U.S. Something that makes me nervous is Chinese electric vehicle exports. I think, you know, those are so heavily subsidized by the Chinese state that they risk really eviscerating the American car industry if we were to let them in en masse. So the key really when negotiating with China is to know what we can horse trade on, what is on the table, and what needs to be off the table from the start. So far, so good.
Another key, though, Jeff, and we'll leave it here after this, will China, at the end of these negotiations, at the end of these summit, actually stick to what they agreed to? Because recent history, past history, dictates that they do not typically do that. Oftentimes, a week after a summit like this, they'll renege. So what What do you think?
I think you're right about that, and I think that's part of the reason we're having this summit to begin with. One of the ways we've framed this engagement is as kind of a compliance checkpoint after Busan. So President Trump, President Xi met in South Korea last October. We saw this as a way to sort of check in 6 months later and see, are the Chinese upholding their commitments? I mean, part of the reason that China hawks get nervous around the time of these summits is that historically the Chinese diplomats have frankly outplayed their American counterparts. To victim, we have sort of fallen trapped to this engagement construct that China likes to create, and China has not fallen through on its commitments. And I think President Trump is right to have these checkpoints every few months and say, look, if China, if you're not meeting your commitments, we're going to scale up sanctions or export controls or tariffs, and we need to hold to that.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. This conversation clearly went well, and that's great on the surface, but you always do have to remember that she is playing the long game to overthrow the United States as a leading superpower. So there is also
big nugget there. Yeah.
The big nugget there. All right, Jeff Smith, director of the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center. We thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we can't forget that. That was like key right there. Wait, am I frozen? Let's see. Can't forget that. What's that?
Welcome back to Beijing. China has the largest active military in the world and more naval ships than any other country. Despite the show of force, Beijing has not fought in a war in more than 4 decades, leaving its troops largely untested. Tonight we look at China's military buildup. China's military falls under control
Here's
of the
a
Chinese
behind-the-scenes
Communist Party
look.
rather than the state. The command structure includes not just
Doc,
military officers,
what you're
but
asking
political
for.
leaders too. Have you seen
My
a
audio is
change
loud?
from the time you served and now in the PLA?
Of course, tremendous changes because I actually started my service in 1979. That is a time when China started opening up and reform. So I have seen all the changes.
Joe Bo is a retired senior colonel who served in the People's Liberation Army. He's now a senior fellow in the Center for International Security and Strategy at Tsinghua University.
You can imagine what a kind of sea change it must be, right? At that time, China is definitely one of the most backward countries. And now China, probably in other people's eye, is a country standing more next to the United States.
China has put a lot of money and time into building up its military. Does China have military advantages over the U.S.?
I think the conflict in Iran was a real clear signal to the Chinese that they have a ways to go in developing their military forces. That said, they are engaged in a massive conventional and nuclear forces buildup.
The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimates Beijing launched 220 warships between 2000 and 2024, while the U.S. added 107 in the same time period. The U.S. and China are the 2 largest military powers. How does China view the U.S. militarily?
The goal is to become a world-class military by 2049. If you talk about, our capabilities around the globe, I think we are far behind the United States. But if you are talking about, our military capabilities in the periphery, I think this is closing.
The number of Chinese naval ships now surpasses the number of U.S. vessels. The U.S. Navy is still ahead in total tonnage, and its ships are considered superior due to technology and operational experience. As China's built up its Navy, did that change the dynamic in the South China Sea?
Well, it certainly does. The South China Sea right now is a flashpoint at places like Scarborough Shoal, which is generally considered to be part of the Philippines. But also we have seen the Chinese go hard after the Japanese in the East China Sea. So they've got a numerical advantage there. They've got the bases in the Spratlys in the southern portion of the South China Sea. And that really means that in a fight, the Chinese have a built-in initial advantage.
China has also built its own islands in the disputed waters. Estimates show since 2013, China has added around 3,200 acres of new land, some of which are now equipped with military bases, fighter jets, and missile launchers.
Are you saying that the United States would come to Taiwan's defense if China attacked?
Yes, we have a commitment to do that. That's the commitment we made. We're not encouraging them being independent. We're not, that's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
Our policy has been strategic ambiguity. President Biden wasn't that ambiguous in some of those answers. One, do you think China is closer to doing that, to taking over Taiwan? And two, what would our response be?
Well, I think you're right. We do have a responsibility to Taiwan. You've seen President Trump exercise, selling military weapons to Taiwan 3 times what had been previously done.
We support the Republic of China, a founding member, as the only rightful representative of China in that organization.
President Dwight D. Eisenhower is the only sitting commander-in-chief to ever visit Taiwan, and did so when the U.S. still supported the nationalist government on the island. Since then, top U.S. and Taiwanese officials have held few direct talks and have had even fewer face-to-face conversations while adhering to the one China policy.
My belief is that those citizens of Taiwan will still be secure.
When President Jimmy Carter formalized relations with the People's Republic of China, the policy put in place U.S. acknowledgement of the Chinese position that Taiwan was part of China. Washington would maintain unofficial relations with Taipei's government, but when it came to defending the island militarily, the policy was intentionally vague. A lot of the questions now center around Taiwan and what China may or may not do. As you look at this, U.S. policy has been strategic ambiguity. Is President Trump ambiguous, or do you think where does he stand on Taiwan?
Well, he has not been clear about Taiwan, and that's in line with American foreign policy that goes back decades. The Chinese military is not in a position right now to go after Taiwan. This is a very good time for us to be clear what we will do to protect freedom and democracy in an important friend of the United States.
President Xi, though, may say, look what you did in Venezuela. Look what you're doing with a blockade in Iran. Why can't we do that around Taiwan? It's closer than those places are to you.
Let's just say the Chinese moved successfully against Taiwan. That assumes that China then stops there and that is the end of the play. If you've got the largest surface fleet in the world, and when I speak to Chinese interlocutors about, well, you'll then bring about a peace dividend, will you? And sort of retrench half of your navy because mission accomplished, they quietly smile. So the underpinning reason why I think it is in America's interests to hold a line in terms of Taiwan is you don't want to create, frankly, a strategic tipping point which causes China to believe it can move into the Central Pacific.
Do you think that's going to come up in this summit and be a dominant factor here?
Yeah, definitely it will come up. I really, really believe it is in America's own interest not to sell arms to Taiwan. Why? Because now China simply has more tools in the toolkits, be it sanction or be it military exercises around islands, which if this kind of arms sales continue, will definitely become more frequent, more sophisticated, which eventually would make the situation more tense.
Along with a focus in naval assets, President Xi has also boosted China's space program. Bill, you wrote about the Space Force and the report predicting a future conflict with China when it comes to space.
Yes, the Space Force is saying they looked out at 2040 and they saw what they said is low-level or gray zone warfare. That is really conflict below the level of actually firing lasers or missiles or that kind of thing. I think we're already kind of in that kind of a zone right now, except the U.S. side is rather refusing to recognize it.
Beijing is not part of the International Space Station program. The U.S. objected to China's inclusion over concerns its space program was too secretive and too closely tied to its military. But China could soon have the only permanent presence in space. The International Space Station is expected to deorbit in the next 5 years. If no replacement is ready, China's Tiangong space station will be the sole habitat in orbit. What are China's space ambitions?
Well, so in space, China is developing by leaps and bounds, but we have been calling for no placement of weapons whatsoever in space.
Would China consider including other countries on its space station? The U.S. is going to deorbit its space station until another one gets up. Are there other countries that China is working with?
Well, China is certainly most open to this kind of idea. The question lies with the United States, because you have Wolf amendments, which would actually tie up your own hands. Because for your astronauts, say, to join Chinese astronaut to work in Chinese space station, you have to, break your own taboos first.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
My. Look at the time. Let me do some highlights for you guys. Good morning, Brother Law. It's not. Yeah, I'll do the highlights.
Demonstrate one thing, it's that the experts and the committed Trump haters were wrong once again. Now, it was headline after headline screaming of America's vulnerability going into this summit. From Al Jazeera, why Beijing may have the advantage, to Reuters saying how Trump's hand weakened ahead of the Xi summit, and to my favorite from the New York Slimes, Xi is planning victory lap over the United States. Come on. All right, the same people who praised Obama's deaf diplomacy for 8 years as China got stronger were confident that Trump's visit would be a disaster.
By choosing to launch this war on Iran, Trump's put himself in a weaker position.
Our country is not in a strong position at the moment going into these negotiations. That is speaking the truth.
Superpower rival bogged down in the Middle East. China feels that it has the upper hand.
Okay, Jim. The upper hand, yeah. How silly, how unserious these people are. If that were true, President Trump would be putting the tariffs on the table if China really had the upper hand, meaning he would at some point offer to roll them back. There is no sign as of now that that is happening, thank God. And that's a huge power move. It's a sign of true America First strength. The fact of the matter is, for more than 2 decades, the U.S. helped turn China into the economic powerhouse it is today. Weak trade policy allowed the CCP to help the nation dominate in manufacturing. U.S. corporations, they were incentivized to outsource millions of jobs. Washington was asleep at the switch as China stole critical intellectual property. All the while, misguided foreign policy in Iraq and the Middle East took our focus off the growing China threat. So what happened? Well, China's exports surged. Initially, it was just textiles and shoes, and now it's electronics and drones. Only Donald Trump, though, saw the problem and actually took it seriously.
We can't continue to allow China to rape our country, and that's what they're doing. It's the greatest theft in the history of the world.
It is the greatest theft the world has ever seen. Tariffs were and are the most potent weapon we have, and no one on Wall Street wanted them. But guess what? Donald Trump didn't care.
The only way you're going to get along well with China is you have to deal from a position of strength. We have tremendous strength because of tariffs. We have tremendous strength because of what I've done.
Yeah, digging ourselves out of our dependence on China for magnets, rare earths, it's going to take some time. And Trump is taking that seriously as well. Obviously, we followed all the initiatives in that regard. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. So continuing to talk to China while we continue to rebuild our economy, our manufacturing base, look, this is not the wrong call. And most of this summit seems like kind of a friendly stabilization effort. Trump and Xi already have another meeting set in September at the White House. Plus, the administration is working on getting more investments.
We're going to talk about forming a board of trade for the bilateral trade between the U.S. and China, and we're going to talk about a board of investment that will be responsible for investment in non-sensitive areas.
Now, this has been batted around for some time. It's not that new, but it's not a bad thing. There are some other Chinese pledges we were talking about with Ducey that sound good as well, although always with everybody, especially the Chinese, the devil is in the follow-through. Again, on those 200 Boeing jets, it was expected to be 500. On the beef export licenses, this is really important to our beef, our slaughterhouses. China promised to grant 600 export licenses, but already 400 are in limbo. So the outcome of the summit was basically what Bessent and Jamieson Greer had been signaling for weeks. The U.S. is willing to talk to China. We want to stabilize the relationship with handshakes. We're going to give them enough respect. We're going to invite them to talk to our top CEOs, bring them all to the table as well. But we do not need China as much as they need us. They need our market because, remember, they are an export economy. And look, nobody is taking this away from China. Of course, because we help them, China's economic progress is astounding. But its long-term challenges are very real. Meanwhile, the U.S., it's booming. Look at where the stock market ended up today. And you see which country is coming out of this summit looking stronger. This is where the world wants to invest. Now, when Trump was elected, the Dow was around 19,000. It's now over 50,000. Of course, I could have done without Trump talking about what a great leader she is. We'll get into that a little bit later. She is a murderous dictator. His country unleashed COVID on the world and lied about it. But negotiating and strategizing, look, this is Trump's forte. It's not mine. I don't think Trump trusts Xi more than any of us do. So if Trump had gone over there and insulted China, all the people criticizing him now would be taking China's side. Nevertheless, real questions linger. On the NVIDIA sale of advanced chips to 10 Chinese companies, for instance, if America emerges from this more vulnerable, then Trump, the Republicans, will pay a huge political price for that. Of course, Democrats, look, they've never been great on China, but they're pretending they're good now, but they're already waiting to pounce.
I'm concerned that he's got Jensen Huang on this trip with him, the CEO of NVIDIA, because he intends to make a chips for beans deal where we will license even more advanced AI chips in exchange for a temporary benefit.
But what did a Democrat president do more than Trump did to stand up for U.S. manufacturers? And not just the ag community, by the way, but no one has done more than Trump. What have Democrats done to stand up to China's abuses on intellectual property, on their spying in the United States? No one has done as much as Trump. So the truth is, his policies have given us more leverage over China than we've ever had. Think about if Kamala had won. She wouldn't even need a summit to raise a glass. Certainly champagne, that would have been uncorked on election night. It would have been a nonstop celebration of the end of America. But as of now, because of Trump, we have a real opportunity to grind China down. So let them put on all their parades, let them trot out all their creepy children, rehearse little communists jumping up and down. None of it matters. For once, time is on our side, not theirs. And that's the angle.
Fox News alert, Beijing is drenched in pageantry for the Trump trip. He's the first president in 50 years to walk through the Temple of Heaven. Ford was the last one in. The Confucian Temple, built in the 1400s during the Ming Dynasty. Only the emperor was allowed to step inside. It's where he prayed for good weather. Trump, a Protestant, went inside and made it rain. More on that later. First, the party started at China's Great Hall, right across the street from Tiananmen Square. Trump wasn't in a tank. He was in the Beast and pulled up to shake hands with Xi. And it was a long shake, 15 seconds. Some friendly patting. Both men stood still. No one leaned in. Who won? Some call it a draw, but Xi did release first. And then Trump hit him with a little pat in the back. Body language experts say that was a power move. The fashion police noticed that POTUS rocked a red tie, which experts say aligned visually with the dominant ceremonial palette of China. Xi wore a purple tie to evoke the symbolism of the purple forbidden city, the center of Chinese power. Didn't see a lot of hostility. Diplomats on the ground actually say there was a lot of chemistry. Xi, who tends to be more reserved in public, put on a show. The Chinese honor guard played the Star-Spangled Banner, but the president was most impressed by this.
I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing.
People say the ceremony was more jovial, conversational, and personally interactive than Trump's last visit in 2017. A lot more smiles this time. But body language experts say Trump showed gravitas and stayed focused. Quote, I think that Trump feels the power, feels like this is a formidable meeting. He is not intimidated by Xi at all. He's showing, kind of like a peacock or a lion, he's showing his power. Trump brought that energy into his meeting. The two men spoke for 2 hours and 15 minutes, longer than expected.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great. Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah.
Xi said some beautiful words, too.
Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals.
There was a little bit of a skirmish, though, not between Xi and Trump, but between Secret Service and the Chinese police. They say it was a Chinese version of a Mexican standoff, a Chexican standoff.
There have been some heated and physical clashes between the Secret Service and the Chinese police on basically at the back doors of these events, including one very physical standoff where a Secret Service officer was being prevented from taking his weapon in as part of the protective detail. But things have all been ironed out. And as far as we know, the schedule has not been changed because of that.
But they patched it up by dinner time. Xi even had his musicians play an instrumental version of the YMCA, although there was no dancing. Not that kind of party. And the food? Guests started off with lobster and tomato soup, followed by a pan-fried pork bun, or better known in Chinese as a shengjianbao. Entrees, a choice of crispy beef ribs, a suckling Beijing roast duck, or a slow-cooked salmon in mustard sauce. For dessert, a trumpet shell-shaped pastry. Get it? And tiramisu, which we're pretty sure is Italian. Here's the president's toast.
Tonight, it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th. And we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast to the rich and enduring ties between the American and Chinese people. It's a very special relationship, and I want to thank you again. This has been an amazing period of time. Thank you, President Xi.
Out of respect, the president, who doesn't drink, imagine if he did, even took a sip of champagne. Trump, though, had his glass served by an American waiter. Both sides made sure the other side didn't get their fingerprints or DNA. All custom. The White House is taking all the necessary protocols. They're all using burner phones this week. But despite everything, Trump says our two nations have more things in common than not.
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say, just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
There's one thing that both men understand very well: money.
The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
Xi told Trump China's open for business, even wider than before. We hope that's true because that's music to the president's ears.
So I'm in China. We had the greatest CEOs in the whole world. We had about 30 of them, and they were pitching President Xi on doing business in China. I think they were successful.
Musk was there, even brought his son, X. Elon says X is learning Mandarin. Jesse Jr. is learning Spanish. And the Doge Master was kind of a celebrity. Everyone lining up to take pictures with the world's richest man, even Apple's Tim Cook. The feeling among the business community, upbeat. NVIDIA's CEO, AKA the chip guy, he was there and he was pumped.
President Trump and President Xi have a wonderful relationship, and we have great hopes that we will build upon their great relationship and improve the relationship of our two nations.
NVIDIA's coming home with a pretty big deal. The White House just gave them the green light to sell their AI chips to China, but remember, not the best ones. They'll still be happy. Besant says he's going to make China play by the rules so that we don't all get slaughtered by robots.
The U.S. is the undisputed leader in the world here. We have the greatest AI companies. We're actually going to be discussing the AI guardrails with the Chinese. We're going to set up a protocol in terms of how do we go forward with best practices for AI to make sure non-state actors don't get a hold of these models.
By getting in business with the Chinese, we're hoping it makes them less hungry for Taiwan. China doesn't have the chip tech to beat us in the AI race, and the island's producing about 90% of the world's best semiconductors. And the Chinese have been salivating over Taiwan for geographic reasons, historical reasons. But now that it's an AI island, if they can't hack them, they just want to grab them. But we told them, pause off.
China wants to invade Taiwan?
Well, I think China's preference is probably to have Taiwan willingly, voluntarily join them. In a perfect world, what they would want is some vote or a referendum in Taiwan that agrees to fold in. I think that's what they would prefer. Ultimately, it's featured prominently in President Xi's mandate. In the time he's been in office, he's made clear that what they call reunification, that's what they call it, is something that has to happen at some point. We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States.
The Chinese want to boom, but we can boom together. We already opened our country up, and they didn't. No more suckers. The Chinese are also buying more soybeans and energy. And by the way, Trump and Xi talked about Iran. We'll cover that in the next block. And while we're at it, how about some big, beautiful Boeings?
What does he want from the U.S.?
A lot of things. We talked about a lot of things. Too many things to discuss, but a lot of things. We had a very good meeting, but we want things from them. One thing he agreed to today is going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing, Boeing's.
Boeing.
200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs. It's a lot. Boeing wanted 150, he got 200. He said, I think it was a commitment. I mean, sort of like a statement, but I think it was a commitment.
The markets love it. The Dow topped 50,000 today, first time since before the war. And the S&P and NASDAQ surging to fresh record highs. This time, though, Trump has tariffs and domestic supply chains to protect American jobs and factories. Hopefully, this is the last time we get ripped off.
We're not trying to constrain China, but their rise cannot come at our expense. Their rise cannot come at our fall. So there's an area where we're just going to have a difference of opinion. But when that plan is in conflict with the national interest of the United States, we need to do what's right for the United States.
Xi told the president something very interesting. Quote, "The world has come to a new crossroads. Can China and the U.S. overcome the Thucydides trap?" Now, he's referring to the war between Athens and Sparta. Athens was the established power, and Sparta was the younger upstart. They ended up fighting a vicious war, with Sparta winning. The Chinese see themselves as an ancient power, and the United States as a young rising one, and want to avoid direct military conflict. That is probably until they think they're more powerful than us, but we'll see. Trump had a different interpretation. Quote, "When President Xi very elegantly referred to the United States as perhaps being a declining nation, he was referring to the tremendous damage we suffered during the 4 years of Sleepy Joe Biden and the Biden administration. And on that score, he was 100% correct. But now the United States is the hottest nation anywhere in the world, and hopefully our relationship with China will be stronger and better than ever before." Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
But first,
what do you guys think about that? Are we still friends, you guys? You guys are cutting up in the chat. We're cutting up. Let me give you one more before I get out of here. I think one more. I almost played this one for you guys, but for the sake of time, I didn't. So I'm going to give you a little tidbit of what happened at CENTCOM. Let me bring you guys in. Are we still friends, you guys? Or are you all tripping?
Pushed back on questions from Democrats about Iran.
Jen.
Hi, John. Well, most of the sensitive answers came in classified briefings earlier this morning. Admiral Brad Cooper, the head of CENTCOM, pushed back on questions from Democrats about Iran's ballistic missile stockpile, how much is left of that and its launchers, how many have survived following a New York Times report based on leaked intelligence.
Thank you.
Iran continues to have as much as 70 to 75% of its missiles and launchers available to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
What I would say from my perspective is the numbers that I've seen in open source are not accurate.
Today, Iran captured another commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, but Admiral Cooper said it will take a decade for Iran to rebuild its navy.
Is Iran now less of a threat than it was 11 months ago?
They are significantly less of a threat.
Is it fair to say that the Iranian regime is still a revolutionary terrorist regime even after all the deaths of their senior leaders?
They are. I think it's also fair to say across every element of national power, they've been significantly degraded.
There were also questions about civilian casualties and why the Pentagon disbanded its.
Then bombed 22 schools.
There's no indication that we have that has been corroborated.
How many schools have we bombed?
There is one active civilian casualty investigation from the 13,629 munitions.
So how do you explain the publicly available information that 22 schools have been hit and multiple hospitals?
There's no way that we can corroborate that. No indication of that whatsoever, Senator.
What is not clear is whether military operations will resume and what the plan is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. John?
A lot may hinge on the outcome of this meeting with President Xi. We will see. Jen Griffin for us. Jen, thank you.
Hey guys, as much as I'd like to end on a good note with Donald Trump, there was, I love you guys. I'm going to give you the latest on Ghislaine before I go. And after that, I'm going to bid you guys good night, okay? Here's my last one. I don't really like ending on this note, but I told you guys, we cover the Epstein files. We cover what's happening with the latest. And this is the latest that I've found, all right? I don't like it, but I'm just here to cover the news.
Tonight, a former employee at Ghislaine Maxwell's prison is speaking out and sharing emails without front that she says show that Maxwell received special treatment at the facility. Now, in one email, Maxwell is exuberant about the minimum security prison she was mysteriously transferred to just a week after her 2-day interview with then Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She writes, quote, "The food is legions better. The place is clean. The staff is responsive and polite. I feel like I have dropped through Alice in Wonderland's looking glass. I am much, much happier here and, more importantly, safe." Interesting to describe it as happy. It comes after our MJ Lee spoke exclusively with other inmates at the prison who gave examples about the special treatment Maxwell's received, including one inmate who spoke to MJ anonymously because she's still serving time inside that prison.
She'd get bottled waters and clamshell meals delivered to her room.
All of this raising very serious questions about why a convicted child sex offender was not only serving time at a minimum security facility, but also allegedly receiving this kind of treatment. Out front now, Noella Turnage, a former employee at federal prison camp Bryan, who was fired for sharing Maxwell's emails. And Noella, these emails are obviously so important to understanding what's happening here. And I want to read more specific emails that you've shared with us. But first, what we just heard there, clamshell meals, bottled water delivered to Maxwell's room. What more can you tell us about the special treatment that Maxwell is receiving?
Well, Aaron, what I think it's important to understand is I never actually laid eyes on Maxwell. Everything I knew about what happened with her was from the content of those emails, which were what she was sending home to friends, to family, so on and so forth. What I can tell you is that the things that were being done for her were not common for any of the other inmates, not even the other high-profile inmates.
And what were some of the things that stood out to you from the emails exchanges that you read?
Well, the two main things for me were the visit that was arranged for her, because what wasn't very highly publicized about that was the lengths they went to provide a private visit for Maxwell actually caused visitation to be shut down for the rest of the inmates that weekend. They were not able to see their families that Saturday to make way for Maxwell to see her visitors. There was also the warden's personal handling of her mail, which may not sound like a big deal to some people, but the other inmates in that prison, Aaron, they have a hard time getting out their regular mail, much less anything needed for court filings and things such as that. So for them to go out of the way to make sure that Maxwell had that opportunity was pretty disgusting to me.
So let me talk about one of the visits that you're, I believe, referring to, an email that you shared with us from Maxwell to her brother, which gave details about his upcoming visit to her, in which she writes, quote, "I believe they will provide some water, coffee, and snack. You will not go without anything after flying all the way from the UK. Also, you will arrive at the front like everyone else, but there will be a cornered-off area for you. Only you will go there. They will be waiting for you from 8 a.m. Now, Noella, you worked at that prison for over 6 years. You were a nurse before you were moved to your role in the mailroom, and you were monitoring phone calls and emails at that. But you've had many roles in the prison. Were other inmates, visitors provided, areas like this, drinks, snacks, all of the things she describes here?
Oh, absolutely not. The only option the other inmates or their visitors had were the overpriced vending machines and visitation. They weren't given anything.
So now the warden's role, which is really hard to understand here. Other emails that you shared with us, Maxwell is talking to her lawyer, and she says things like, Noella, the warden proposes August 18th for your visit. So she brings the warden up in that context. In another, she tells her lawyer, I checked with the warden, and she would rather that I send all the updates through her. So she keeps referencing the warden as if she's having conversations with the warden and they are directly communicating about things. How unusual is that?
That is highly unusual, Aaron. Pretty much the only time you see the warden talk to inmates there is they can approach her at what we call mainline, which is kind of when they're on their way back and forth from the chow hall. Other than that, they, for the most part, do not have direct access to the warden, and certainly not at their convenience.
So in response to CNN's exclusive reporting from other Bryan prison inmates who have said they were punished for speaking out about what they say is special treatment that Maxwell got, a Bureau of Prison spokesperson, responded to us, Noella, and said in part, the BOP is committed to maintaining the highest standards of integrity, impartiality, and professionalism in the operation of its facilities. They went on to say that BOP staff are prohibited from, quote, providing preferential treatment to any inmate. So there it is in black and white. What do you say to that?
I say that they can claim to be committed to it as much as they want. What they say and what they do are two very, very different things.
Your allegations are part of a report in the House Oversight Committee that Democrats put together that alleges a cover-up from the Trump administration on Maxwell, how she's treated. These questions that have not been answered, Noella, as to why she ended up in that facility after that interview with the then Deputy Attorney General, a facility where someone who is convicted for her crimes would never ordinarily ever end up. But because it is a report by Democrats that your emails are a part of, I want to give you a chance to directly respond to some who might say you're motivated by politics. What do you say to that charge?
Aaron, up until all of this, I honestly could have cared less about politics. I registered to vote at 18. I have been a registered Republican since then. I have voted Democrat one time in my life. I voted for Obama to annoy my mother, and it worked, as that would have it. No, it wasn't political at all. The only reason I chose to go to the Democrats is because I had been reporting so many other things along with some other employees there, one of the biggest of which was medical neglect. I went to OIG. I went to a federal judge. I went to different politicians, both Democrat and Republican. Nobody would listen to what we were trying to tell them was going on there.
One of the top issues for survivors is that only Ghislaine Maxwell has been charged related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. And Todd Blanche, for his part, has said no further charges should be brought. He said he's looked at the evidence and what he's seen, no further charges should be brought. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, again, we've pleaded with the survivors. If there are specific names of people that are still alive that have committed terrible crimes to underage girls, then if they would tell us, we will bring them in, and in a bipartisan fashion, we will ask them every question under oath. And if we can have criminal referrals to give to Todd Blanche at the Department of Justice, we are able and willing to do that. I've got Nancy Mace on the committee, Anna Paulina Luna, Lauren Boebert. These ladies on the committee, these Republican women, they are just as committed to prosecuting people and holding people accountable for wrongdoing. I've subpoenaed all the documents from the estate. We have every single document from the estate. Many of the survivors and their attorneys thought that getting the documents from the estate would lead to some names of people that could be convicted, but there weren't any. Now, did someone go in and clean out the estate? The lawyer said they didn't. The accountant said they didn't. Did the federal government? I don't know. We have lots of suspicions about Epstein, whether he was an asset for a foreign country or the United States. We're trying to get to the bottom of this, and I think we've been very transparent with it. It's just been a very difficult case because there's not been any evidence revealed other than many hundreds of poor, innocent women that have come forward and said how they were abused by Epstein and Maxwell.
I can do this for you all day. You guys know I love sharing what's going on in the world. I give you guys a sample of everything, the latest that was happening. And there's so much more. And I do my best to show you what the political right and the political left are saying. The Epstein files and everything that's going on with Epstein is so layered. So every time I get the latest, I'm going to give it to you. And that's just what it is. As usual, Sally, I've got to get my workout in. But I would thank you for subscribing, Hyper Odin, if you guys are around. So We got the weekend coming up. However, I will be here later today. Feel free to leave me a comment under my community wall if you guys want me to cover something. If I missed something, I appreciate it when you guys do that. So leave me a comment under my community post. Let me know who you are. Let me see. Yeah, Hyper Odin. I'm so sorry. I show you guys. I don't try to convince you guys of anything. I show you guys the news and let you make your own decisions. All right. So that's why I do not mind if you guys are wilding out in the chat. If you guys are disagreeing in the chat, have at it. You won't be censored here unless it's against YouTube algorithm. Okay. I agree with you, Valerie. I hear you. Real Trump said, good morning. Good morning. Jerome says, I'm so proud of you. That's why I do the things I do. Jerome, I appreciate your support, my friend. Doc, I appreciate you. Okay, you guys, let me get my workout in before I come back. I got to work out before I go to work. And then I will be back later with what's happening latest. And over the weekend, we usually do panels or something like that. All right. We kind of take it easy over the weekend. I'm praying for the country and I'm praying for all of you. You guys, please be safe. We're still friends. We're still friends. Yeah, the chat gets wild. After the midterms, conservatives go vote in the midterms. Files will be released unless Donald Trump brought out the trials. I gotta go to bed. Donald Trump brought out the files. It could have been brought out during the Biden administration because he did have access to them and he could have released them. Nevertheless, we're getting what we get now. I don't believe we'll get everything from the Epstein files. There's too many powerful people. It's not about the political right or the political left. It's about right and wrong, power and prestige, and they got away with a lot of stuff. And it's because of their status in the country. Good night, you guys. I love you, and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.